Mr. Paul, I'd like to request a 1-month marriage leave. I'm preparing to return to my hometown to get married. When did you start seeing someone? The supervisor's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Hearing this, Catherine smiled. You'll know when I send you the wedding invitation. Though, at this moment, even she didn't know who the groom would be. Mr. Paul smiled and said, all right then, I'll be waiting to see. But first, make sure you properly hand over your work during this long leave. I will, thank you Mr. Paul received the leave approval slip. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Catherine walked out of the supervisor's office just in time to overhear colleagues gossiping nearby. Look, I told you best actor Cyrus and Kelly are real. Mr. Cyrus actually gave his never-separated prayer beads to Kelly. If this isn't love, then what is? Catherine paused mid-step and glanced at her colleague's screen. The video showed Cyrus gazing affectionately as he removed the prayer beads from his left wrist and personally placed them on Kelly's hand. These prayer beads have never left Mr. Cyrus's wrist since his debut. They must hold immense significance. But now he just gave it to Kelly. The favoritism is so blatant. Her colleague's words drifted into Catherine's ears one by one. She stared blankly at the prayer beads. No one knew that 6 years ago, when Cyrus was injured and unconscious during his first film shoot, she had climbed the 999 steps of Lingyuan Temple, kowtowing at each one with devout prayers to obtain them for him. Yet now, he had casually given them away to someone else. Just then, a colleague spotted Catherine and quickly put away their phone, looking slightly awkward. Catherine, you're Cyrus's fan, right? Do you dislike us shipping his CP? Hearing this, Catherine smiled and shook her head. No. They do look good together, so she chose to step back, for Cyrus's sake. At 8 p.m., she returned home from work. As soon as she entered, Catherine spotted the familiar figure curled up in the corner of the sofa. Hearing the noise, the man looked up at her, his tone slightly displeased. Why are you back so late? Working overtime again. It was none other than the actor Cyrus, who had trended on social media that very day. Catherine hummed in acknowledgement, changed her shoes, and walked over. No sooner had she walked over than Cyrus reached out to grab her hand, pushing her directly onto the sofa. I told you long ago to quit that lousy illustrator job. I'll take care of you, Cyrus mumbled, then planted a liquor-scented kiss on her neck. All these years, it seemed the only reason he came to her was for this. She had known Cyrus since high school. She accompanied him from obscurity to the spotlight, and they had been intimate countless times. Yet Catherine knew they could never be considered a couple. This ambiguous relationship had lasted for 8 years now. She once fantasized that if she stayed by Cyrus's side, perhaps one day he would fall in love with her. But now, she finally understood she had merely been a joke all along. Heavy breaths and kisses rained down upon her relentlessly. As Cyrus's hand was about to slip under her clothes, Catherine pushed against him with both hands. I'm not in the mood today. She didn't actually enjoy these things, but if Cyrus wanted to, she wouldn't refuse. Cyrus paused mid-motion and immediately stood up. What a buzzkill. He sat back on the couch. Catherine's gaze traveled from his deep-set eyes, past his high nose and thin lips, slowly moving downward until it finally settled on his now empty wrist. In the end, she never asked about his Buddhist bracelet, only inquiring as usual, have you eaten? I'll go cook. Cyrus lay drowsily on the sofa and responded with a faint Catherine got up and went to the kitchen to simmer some stomach-nourishing millet porridge. By the time the dishes were ready, the porridge had finished cooking too. When he came out again, Cyrus was already asleep on the couch. She sat on the carpet, quietly gazing at that handsome, delicate face before her. In the past, no matter how many times she looked at him, her heart would race as if it were their first meeting. But today, her heart remained unusually calm. Cyrus was strikingly handsome, so much so that it felt almost unreal. She had long known that someone like him could never belong to her, but she had always been timid and cowardly. Things she wanted to do required mustering up courage first. Fortunately, at last, she had mustered enough courage to leave him. Catherine took a deep breath. In the end, she didn't wake Cyrus, ate dinner alone, and went to bed. The next morning when Catherine woke up, Cyrus was already gone. She didn't pay it any mind, had breakfast as usual, and went to work. At the office, when a colleague handed Catherine some documents, they looked at her computer screen in surprise. Catherine, you changed Cyrus's wallpaper on your computer. All these years, everyone in the company knew she was a fan of Cyrus, with his pictures as wallpapers on her computer and phone, but now, her wallpaper had changed to the most ordinary landscape photo. Catherine simply smiled calmly. Yes, I'm tired of it. I've outgrown the age of dreaming now. She no longer wanted to indulge in the illusory dreams he had brought her. Her colleague didn't ask further upon hearing this. After all, when it comes to celebrity worship, losing interest is perfectly normal. Catherine took the documents and went about her business. When handing over work, her colleagues learned about her upcoming long leave for marriage and offered their congratulations. Catherine smiled in response to each one. I'll bring you wedding sweets when I return from my break. After work, Catherine rarely had a meal together with her colleagues. After eating and drinking to our heart's content, we went for karaoke. Inside the Prologue Club, the music was loud, neon lights flickered, and the air was thick with the smell of alcohol. On the way to the private room, Catherine caught a glimpse of a familiar figure out of the corner of her eye. It's Cyrus. After all these years, she had long developed the ability to spot him in a crowd at a single glance, but at this moment, she didn't cast another look in that direction. Instead, she withdrew her peripheral gaze and continued walking forward. She entered the private room. The colleagues soon became lively and started playing around. Catherine found a seat by the side and sat down. However, it wasn't long before Cyrus's call came through. She glanced around to make sure no one was paying attention before finding an empty corner to answer the call. On the other end of the line, Cyrus's voice was as cold and commanding as ever. I'm in the private room on the 6th floor, come here. Before she could respond, he added, I just saw you. Catherine refused, saying, I don't want to go. She didn't want her good mood today to be ruined. As the words fell, there was a moment of silence on the other end. Even through the phone, she could sense Cyrus's displeasure. Then, his voice carried a hint of threat. If you don't come, then I'll come find you. Catherine pressed her lips together. She knew that with Cyrus's temperament, he would truly do it. Not wanting her colleagues to know about their relationship, she responded with a quiet, After hanging up, Catherine excused herself to the restroom and quickly left the private room, rushing all the way to Cyrus's private booth. Just as I was about to enter, voices drifted out from inside. Cyrus, that Catherine looks plain and has such a dull personality. Aren't you tired of playing with her after so long? My heart clenched instantly. Then, she heard Cyrus answer carelessly, of course it's because she's only been with me, clean. Instantly, Catherine froze in place. The word clean should have been a compliment, but at this moment, it sounded particularly nauseating to Catherine's ears. Right now, it only confirmed that leaving Cyrus was the right decision. She waited at the door for a moment before pushing it open. Those inside saw Catherine and immediately teased, Catherine, these are all the drinks Cyrus owes from the game, hurry up and drink them for him. On the table they pointed to, a row of glasses stood neatly arranged, under everyone's gaze. Catherine lifted her eyes calmly to look at Cyrus, who sat in the center. Did you call me here just to drink for you? Cyrus raised an eyebrow as if it were obvious. What else? All these years, Catherine had built up her alcohol tolerance solely from drinking on Cyrus's behalf. Yet this time she refused without hesitation. Alcohol harms the body. I won't drink. Apparently not expecting Catherine to say this, the private room fell into silence. Even Cyrus had a slightly darkened expression. At that moment, someone suddenly thought of something and spoke up in a teasing tone. Oh, Catherine must be angry, right? Is it because Cyrus gave the prayer beads you begged for him to someone else? Catherine never expected the matter of the prayer beads to be brought up so abruptly. Cyrus's probing gaze also settled on Catherine. The private room fell silent for a moment, but Catherine merely said calmly, since they were given to Cyrus, they're his belongings now. Who he chooses to give them to is his business. The others' expressions flickered with surprise, and soon someone teased Cyrus with a laugh. Cyrus, having Catherine be so utterly devoted to you is truly enviable. However, Cyrus frowned slightly. He glanced at Catherine before standing up. You guys have fun. I'm taking her with me first. With that, he directly pulled Catherine out of the private room. The two left the private room and exited the club together. Finally, sitting in Cyrus's nanny van, Catherine first lowered her head to message her colleagues that she wasn't feeling well and was heading back early, telling them to enjoy themselves. After sending the message, she looked up to meet Cyrus's probing gaze. The van was utterly silent. Cyrus stared at her and asked, You're angry? Catherine was taken aback and shook her head. No, you're mad that I gave the prayer beads to Kelly, Cyrus declared with certainty once again. Catherine felt somewhat helpless. He was always so self-righteous, she sighed. If you insist on thinking that way, then so be it. Hearing this, Cyrus raised an eyebrow slightly and brushed the back of his hand against her cheek. It's just a string of prayer beads. You can get me another one, and I'll keep wearing it. He made it sound so simple. Catherine leaned back in her chair, avoiding his touch. She simply said with a composed expression, "You're now free from illness and misfortune. And your career is at its peak. You don't need these anymore." After speaking, Catherine closed her eyes and feigned sleep, refusing further communication. Beside her, Cyrus gazed at her for a long while but ultimately said nothing more. The car soon stopped at Catherine's apartment building. Catherine looked at Cyrus. "Tonight I still have to catch my flight, so I won't be going upstairs." Cyrus remained motionless. Catherine actually felt relieved. Just as she was about to get out of the car, Cyrus called her back again. "Here, take this. Consider it my apology." Inside the small gift box was a crystal bracelet from the luxury brand DX. Catherine glanced at it twice without refusal. Thank you." Clutching the gift, she stepped out of the car. Back home, Catherine never gave it another look, simply placing the gift box into a packing carton alongside all the presents Cyrus had given her over the years. When leaving, she would return them all to Cyrus. On the other side, during the theater intermission, Cyrus went straight to Kelly's dressing room and asked for the prayer beads back. Kelly nestled softly in his arms, caressing the beads on her wrist and coquettishly protested. "How can you take back what you gave me in front of everyone?" Cyrus twirled Kelly's hair around his finger, a smirk playing on his lips. "I heard these things recognize their owner. Wearing the wrong ones could mess with your luck. I'm just looking out for you." Hearing this, Kelly quickly took it off her wrist and handed it back to him. "Then you'll have to compensate me with something else, of course." Cyrus kissed her hair to soothe her before quickly leaving with the prayer beads. Back in his own lounge, Cyrus rubbed the prayer beads between his fingers for a long time. Just as he was about to put them back on, the prayer bead string suddenly snapped. Scattering all 18 beads across the floor, Cyrus stood frozen in place, staring at the beads strewn across the floor. His brows furrowed coldly as an inexplicable irritation welled up within him. Catherine had spent a leisurely weekend and arrived at work on Monday in rather good spirits. When I entered the break room, my colleagues were gathered together chatting. "Have you seen the new bracelet from DX? I heard there are only 10 limited editions in the country. Truly something money can't easily buy." Catherine glanced sideways. The screen of her colleague's phone clearly displayed the very bracelet Cyrus had given her that night. Her eyes flickered with surprise. She hadn't expected the bracelet to be so precious. Before she could react, another colleague chimed in. "Isn't this the same one Kelly posted on Twitter yesterday? She said Cyrus gave it to her." "Oh my, mister, Cyrus is really spending a fortune to win a beauty's smile." The break room soon erupted in waves of fangirl giggles. Catherine quietly sipped her water. Apparently, Cyrus had just brought her a bracelet as an afterthought while buying one for Kelly. She didn't dwell on it further and returned to her workstation. Busy with project handovers today, Catherine was occupied from morning till afternoon without even a moment to glance at her phone. By the time Catherine finished her work, it was already dark outside. She glanced at her phone. It was already 8 p.m. At the same time, there was a missed call from Cyrus. She took a look, thinking that if Cyrus really had something urgent, he wouldn't have called just once. So Catherine quickly dismissed the call and packed up to leave work. After returning home, Catherine ordered a takeout of extra spicy river snail rice noodles. She had always enjoyed strong flavored foods, especially river snail rice noodles. But Cyrus disliked both the smell and the lingering odor it left on her afterwards, so she hadn't eaten it for many years. When the takeout arrived, Catherine couldn't wait to take the first bite, and a delicious sense of satisfaction instantly spread from her taste buds. Little did she expect, right in the midst of her feast, the door swung open. Cyrus removed his sunglasses with an expression both grim and disbelieving. "Catherine, didn't I forbid you from eating this kind of stuff at home?" Catherine swallowed the sour bamboo shoot in her mouth, completely unruffled. "You never mentioned you were coming today." Cyrus grew even more displeased. "So you think it's fine to eat whatever you want when I'm not around?" Catherine met his gaze calmly, then suddenly smiled. "Cyrus, is eating river snail rice noodles against some law?" This was something the former Catherine would never have said. Cyrus's expression shifted slightly as he studied Catherine for a long moment. Before finally wrinkling his nose and sitting in the farthest corner of the sofa from Catherine, he raised his voice with an odd tone. "Why didn't you answer my calls today?" Catherine put down her chopsticks and replied, "Too busy with work, didn't see it." "What's up?" Cyrus gave an inscrutable look. "Left something behind." "As expected, nothing major." Catherine nodded, uttered an "oh," said no more, and buried herself back in her bowl of noodle. This attitude made Cyrus's face darken completely. Perhaps unable to bear the smell of the stinky tofu noodles any longer, Cyrus got up and went back to the bedroom. likely to fetch something. Before long, he strode out with purpose, only to open the bracelet box and ask her, "Why aren't you wearing the bracelet I gave you?" For a moment, Catherine nearly choked. When she finally caught her breath, she replied, "It's too precious, not suitable for me to wear at work." This answer fell within reasonable expectations. Cyrus stared at Catherine for a long while, ultimately wrinkling his nose in disgust and walking away as she picked up another chopstickful of stinky rice noodles. Catherine finally let out a complete sigh of relief. At last, she could properly enjoy her meal. She had thought that after tonight's ordeal, Cyrus wouldn't come looking for her for quite some time. Yet unexpectedly, the very next day, Catherine had just finished work with her colleagues. Stepping out of the company's entrance, I looked up and saw the fully armed Cyrus parked in a car not far away. Catherine intended to ignore him. The next moment, Cyrus called out to her in front of everyone, "Catherine, come here." Hearing this, a colleague nearby chimed in teasingly, "Catherine, is this your fiancé by any chance?" Catherine had no idea Cyrus was up to this time. But one thing she was certain of, she didn't want her colleagues to find out about Cyrus's identity. Catherine shook her head in denial. No. Immediately, she bid her colleagues farewell and got into the car. The car window rolled up as it sped away. Inside the car, Cyrus kept his eyes on the road and asked bluntly, "Did I just hear your colleague mention something about a fiancé?" "They were just teasing," Catherine replied, frowning as she turned to look at the man beside her, her tone growing serious. "Why did you suddenly show up at my company today?" The tension and displeasure in her demeanor made it seem as if he was something to be ashamed of. Cyrus darkened his expression. "Catherine, do you remember what day it is today?" Hearing this, Catherine paused in surprise. She searched her mind but couldn't recall anything. After a moment of silence, she shook her head honestly. "I don't remember." The screech of brakes sounded as the car abruptly came to a halt in the middle of the road. Catherine turned pale with fright. "What are you doing?" Fortunately, there weren't many cars on this stretch of road, yet Cyrus showed no intention of moving. He turned his head and stared intently at Catherine, enunciating each word clearly. "Today marks 8 years since you followed me, and it's also the premiere date of my first drama." At his words, Catherine suddenly remembered. It was this date. In previous years, she had made a point to remember it, looking forward to celebrating with him, but he had broken his promise too many times. And now she no longer kept the date in mind. Cyrus seemed to have found some unexpected enthusiasm this year. Actually remembering it again, Catherine calmly met the man's gaze, her expression tinged with confusion. "Cyrus, we're not a couple. What's the point of celebrating an anniversary?" She genuinely felt puzzled. After all, it was Cyrus himself who said they weren't a couple and didn't need to celebrate anniversaries. Little did she know that as soon as these words left her mouth, Cyrus's face darkened completely like charcoal. His hands clenched the steering wheel as he laughed in anger. "Fine, Catherine, if you want to be this stubborn with me, then don't regret it. Get out." Catherine didn't understand why her honest words had provoked such fury in him, but she had no intention of explaining herself. Work was exhausting enough. All she wanted was to go home and rest, so she simply opened the car door and stepped out. No sooner had she steadied herself than Cyrus sped away, the car brushing past her. From that day on, for the next 2 weeks, Cyrus did not appear before Catherine. Catherine didn't care. She was busy handing over her work and packing her belongings. This house was rented for her by Cyrus, and after she got married and returned, she certainly wouldn't be living there anymore. On Saturday, Catherine arrived at Lingyuan Temple. Since it all began at Lingyuan Temple, let it end at Lingyuan Temple. After bowing 3 times before the Buddha, the divination sticks were shaken, and a lot fell out. Yet it was the worst possible lot. Treasures gained in dreams vanish upon waking. Believing Mount Nan is but a hoe to till, Catherine stared at the divination slip for a long time. The abbot nearby noticed and bowed respectfully to her. "Patron, the slip suggests that what you sought before was merely flowers in a mirror or the moon reflected in water, though this is the worst possible fortune. If you see the truth early, you will find light in darkness and escape the sea of suffering." Hearing this, Catherine pressed her palms together and returned the abbot's bow. "Thank you, Abbot, I will." This illusory beauty, she had long seen through it, when leaving Lingyuan Temple. Catherine looked at the 999 steps, terrifyingly high. She thought with emotion, only the young are foolish enough to do such things. Now, just the thought of descending those steps made her feel miserable, so Catherine chose to buy a cable car ticket to go down the mountain. Catherine returned home, and it was already dark. As soon as she entered the house, she received a call from her mother back in her hometown. "Catherine, Devin happens to be going to your area tomorrow. I've arranged it for you. You two will have a meal at Riverside Hotel tomorrow. After all, you two are getting married soon. It's about time you met and got to know each other. Catherine's mom was referring to Devin, the man Catherine's family had arranged for her to marry. Devin, after hanging up, Catherine accepted his friend request. They exchanged polite introductions and settled on a time to meet. The conversation ended there, with no further follow-up. Catherine put down her phone and was about to go wash up when the door suddenly knocked. Outside stood Cyrus, reeking of alcohol, supported by his agent. The agent helped Cyrus into the living room, settled him on the sofa, then turned to Catherine with a cold expression. Catherine, I initially tolerated your relationship with Cyrus because you seemed well-behaved, but I never expected you'd turn out to be the most cunning one. Catherine was confused. What do you mean? The agent glared at her coldly. He drank too much at dinner tonight and insisted on coming to your place on the way back. Catherine, I don't care what's going on between you two. I'll pick him up tomorrow morning. You must calm him down and make sure he's ready for tomorrow's live broadcast on time. With those words, the manager turned and left without even giving Catherine a chance to respond. Catherine glanced at Cyrus sleeping soundly on the couch, casually draped a blanket over him, and left it at that. The next day, Catherine had just stepped out the door when Cyrus woke up. He sat on the couch, his face dark with displeasure. How did I end up here? You just let me sleep on the couch like this. It seems he had blacked out himself. Catherine had to explain. Your agent brought you here last night. I really couldn't drag you, so I had to let you sleep on the sofa. After saying this, Catherine tied up her long hair and walked towards the kitchen. Cyrus watched her retreating figure, then looked at the blanket on himself, and eventually let go of his anger. The hangover made Cyrus's head throb. He glanced at the time on his phone and got up to head to the kitchen. No need to make hangover soup, just brew me some honey water. I'll recover a bit before heading out for my schedule. Little did he know, as soon as these words were spoken, Catherine looked at him with an awkward expression. We're out of honey. Maybe have your manager buy some on the way. It was only then that Cyrus noticed what she was cooking in the pot wasn't hangover soup at all, but the century egg and lean pork congee he detested most. His previously improved expression darkened completely. Cyrus said nothing, returning to the living room to grab his coat before leaving. With a loud bang, the door slammed shut. Catherine stood frozen in place for a long moment. She only snapped back to attention when the pot began to bubble. Continuing to simmer her porridge, after breakfast, Catherine received a message from Devin. Should I pick you up this afternoon, or will you come on your own? He was referring to their dinner plans at Riverside Hotel. Catherine quickly replied, I'll go by myself. Devin, all right. No further words were exchanged between them. Catherine could also tell that her fiancé was clearly as reserved a person as she was. 3 p.m. Catherine rarely put on makeup for herself, but today she did before heading to Riverside Hotel for the meeting. When she saw Devin in person, Catherine was somewhat surprised. He was more handsome than in his photos and more talkative than on WeChat. The meal lasted nearly an hour. When their conversation was winding down, Catherine walked out of the private room side by side with him, ready to leave. Unexpectedly, as they looked up, they came face to face with Cyrus, who was about to enter the opposite room, his arm linked with Kelly. Just one glance was exchanged. Catherine quickly averted her gaze, pretending to be a stranger as she walked forward with Devin. She knew Cyrus, he would never abandon Kelly for her. And Catherine was right. Even as she and Devin left the hotel, there was no movement behind them. Then, Devin turned to her and asked, Let's go to the nearest bridal shop. All right. They had just agreed to take advantage of their free time today to go pick out a wedding dress. Catherine snapped back to reality and had no objections. The two went to the bridal shop together. Just as Catherine had changed into the wedding dress and was about to take a photo to show Catherine's mom, Cyrus's message came through. You'd better explain to me who that man next to you was just now. It was Cyrus's usual commanding tone. Catherine stared at the message for a long time, her brow slightly furrowed. Before she could reply, Devin walked out in his changed suit. What's wrong? Catherine didn't reply, exiting Cyrus's chat window as she shook her head. It's fine. Let's take a photo to show my mom. Okay. The two took a mirror selfie together, and Catherine sent it to Catherine's mom. After finalizing the wedding dress, Catherine politely declined Devin's south offer to drive her home, parting ways with him at the bridal shop entrance. Span on the taxi ride home. Span. Cyrus's call came through almost immediately, and Catherine still answered it. The moment the call connected, his furious, piercing words erupted from the other end. Not replying to my messages, taking so long to answer the phone. What? Are you in that man's bed right now? You should know better. I have standards. Women who've been touched by others disgust me. Catherine, you've disappointed me so much. Each word, sharp as a knife, stabbed at her heart, spoken by the man she once loved most. Catherine listened for a long time, until he had vented all his anger. Then she spoke softly, "But Cyrus, have you forgotten? It was you who said on the very first day that neither of us has the right to interfere in each other's lives." Cyrus was left speechless by her words, falling silent for a long while, and Catherine hung up the phone directly. From that day on, Cyrus didn't contact Catherine, nor did he come to the apartment. The last day before the vacation, Catherine received a wedding invitation from Devin. Printed with their photo taken at the bridal shop. On the phone, Devin asked her, "Do you really not regret it, marrying after just one meeting with me?" Catherine turned the question back to him. "What about you? Don't you regret it? With your qualities, you could easily find someone better." There was a brief silence on the other end, followed by a soft chuckle. "Catherine, you're very different from what I imagined." Catherine smiled. Devin was quite different from what she had imagined. This arranged marriage by their parents didn't seem as unacceptable as it had at first. After filling out the wedding invitations, Catherine kept her promise and sent one to Mr. Paul. With all her work handed over, she officially began her wedding leave. First day of vacation, Catherine finished packing all her remaining belongings at home. Unnecessary items were thrown away, while more valuable ones were listed on second-hand platforms. In the end, only her personal belongings remained at home, all fitting neatly into a single suitcase. The second day of her vacation was the day she returned to her hometown. That morning, Catherine sat in the living room, staring at the cardboard box in front of her. Inside were the luxury items Cyrus had given her over the past 8 years: Hermes bags, Cartier jewelry, and the like. She also held a bank card in her hand, the one Cyrus had been depositing money into for her every month. Over the years, she had accumulated several million, yet not a single penny had she touched. Now she had to return all these things to their rightful owner. This would completely sever the entangled relationship they had maintained for the past 8 years. But Catherine found that whether she messaged Cyrus or called him, without exception, she was blocked every time. It seems he really didn't want to have any further involvement with her. Well, soon enough he would get his wish. But these things she ultimately didn't want to owe him. Cyrus had a physical fastidiousness, while she had an emotional one. She couldn't accept money tainting the purity of their relationship. In the end, Catherine chose to call Cyrus's agent. "Where is Cyrus now? I need to talk to him." There was a brief silence on the other end before the agent replied, "Haven't you seen the news? Cyrus just left for the mountains to start filming his new project. There's no signal up there. Whatever you need, you can tell me. It's the same thing." Catherine could tell the agent didn't like her. It seems she and Cyrus weren't even fated to have one last phone call. "So be it," she sighed and said. "Then please tell him for me I'm leaving. If he finds time to return, remember to collect his things from the apartment and cancel the lease. I won't disturb him further. Goodbye." With that, Catherine hung up the phone. Just then, the alarm reminding her to leave for the airport went off. Catherine took one last look at the house she had lived in for 8 years, then pulled her suitcase and walked out without turning back. The door slammed shut, leaving only silence and emptiness in the house. On the living room coffee table inside, bank cards and house keys were neatly arranged, and one of her wedding invitations, half a month later, at a hotel in the mountainous area. Cyrus finally had some time to rest, but when he took out his phone, there were no messages from the person he was hoping to hear from. He frowned, pressing his lips tightly together. He had been somewhat angry before and had blocked Catherine, but it was only for a week. He just wanted to teach Catherine a lesson. Yet after all this time, Catherine hasn't even called or sent a single message. Cyrus rubbed his temples with his fingertips, his expression darkening. For the past month, he'd been feeling an inexplicable unease that kept slipping through his fingers. He kept dreaming of Catherine from time to time. In his dream, Catherine slowly faded from his sight. Each time he woke up, his heart ached faintly. He thought that after finishing this film shoot, he would give Catherine a way out. But Catherine didn't even send him a single message. Cyrus grew increasingly sullen, tossing his phone aside without another thought. When Cyrus's scenes were finally wrapped, his agent Duke personally came to pick him up. Inside the van, Agent Duke sat in the passenger seat, watching Cyrus's pale expression through the rearview mirror. After hesitating for a moment, he spoke up. 2 weeks ago, Catherine called me." Cyrus looked up. "Why would she call you?" The agent Duke smiled. "She said she was leaving and asked you to go back to terminate the lease when you're free, but it's definitely just her way of trying to reconcile. I didn't want to affect your mood while filming. So I didn't tell you. Hearing this, Cyrus raised his eyebrows, but his heart inexplicably sank. Suddenly remembering something, he asked, Duke, when did she call you? The agent Duke thought for a moment and replied, about 4 days after you joined the crew. Cyrus leaned back in his seat. At that time, he hadn't removed Catherine from the blacklist, but how could she endure not contacting him for half a month? A vein throbbed at his temple. His irritation growing increasingly unbearable, he tugged at his collar irritably, pulled out his phone, and texted his 3 buddies. Meet at dusk tonight. Cyrus returned home, wanting to catch up on sleep, but found himself unable to drift off. Night fell quickly. Cyrus was already drinking in the private room. His brothers watched, exchanging puzzled glances. One of them spoke up. Cyrus, what's wrong with you? Cyrus lazily leaned back on the sofa, holding a wine glass. Nothing much. Someone guessed. Could it be because of Catherine? Cyrus said calmly. I can't believe she managed not to contact me for half a month. Someone chuckled and said, Cyrus, someone like her would never leave you. She's utterly devoted to you. I don't believe she could go a lifetime without reaching out. Cyrus smiled, raised his glass, and said, well said, let's keep drinking. Though he thought this way, the inexplicable emotion grew even stronger. After Cyrus waited another week, and news of his wrap-up was already posted online, Catherine still hadn't contacted him. This made him somewhat restless, as if something was slowly slipping away. In the past, even if he was away for just a week, she would send a caring message. Besides, now that he's had a quarrel with Catherine, shouldn't she be the one rushing to apologize? Cyrus knew Catherine hadn't contacted him all this time, and now his mood was growing increasingly unsettled. In the end, he couldn't resist going to find Catherine first. He disdained the idea of seeking out Catherine before she came to him, but his heart played tricks on him. Cyrus drove to the apartment. At the door, he felt uneasy and quickly took out his key to insert it into the lock. Click. As soon as the door opened, Cyrus didn't even have time to step inside. What met his eyes was an empty house, and on the coffee table lay a glaringly red wedding invitation. Cyrus stood frozen in place. He walked forward in disbelief, staring fixedly at that wedding invitation. To Cyrus, his brows furrowed deeply as he instinctively called into the house, Catherine, what the hell are you up to? But the empty house offered no response. Cyrus held his breath, then picked up the wedding invitation. Before his eyes were Catherine and the man he'd seen at the hotel that day. Yet the invitation didn't contain traditional wording. It bore just one line, Cyrus, I'm getting married. May your star continue to rise. And may I find happiness in the years to come. No wedding address, no message whatsoever. She simply left behind her wedding photos and a final farewell, vanishing from his world. In the cardboard box beside him were all the things he had given to Catherine, along with the bank card he had given Catherine. Cyrus's eyes burned crimson as he pulled out his phone to call Catherine, only to hear the automated message, the number you have dialed is not in service. He then tried messaging Catherine, but was met with a red exclamation mark. Cyrus clenched his teeth, his heart pounding violently. He had never imagined Catherine would leave him. But now that Catherine was truly gone, he couldn't bear it. As he stared at these things, his chest seemed buried in bitterness, the veins on his tightly clenched hands bulging. Cyrus finally stormed out of the apartment, drove to a bar, and started drinking, messaging someone to join him. The other brothers who arrived saw Cyrus drinking alone again, and this time he was going at it hard. They were all taken aback. The 3 of them whispered among themselves, what's wrong with him this time? He's been like this ever since he came back from filming. I've never seen him like this. What kind of blow did he suffer? All 3 of them looked at each other before finally sitting down beside Cyrus. Cyrus, what's wrong with you? Cyrus lifted his head slightly, his voice hoarse as he said, Catherine actually left. The 3 men were stunned for a moment. She's just a woman. And Cyrus, you didn't choose her because she was pure in the first place, even without Catherine. There are plenty of other women, so they called over 4 or 5 women. Turning to Cyrus, they said, these women are no worse than Catherine. Cyrus, I think you could try something different. Cyrus looked at the women before him, feeling nothing but disgust. Get out. The women immediately left the private room. The 3 men sighed and didn't say anything more, simply accompanying Cyrus in drinking. This was just their way of testing him. If he showed no interest in other women, it wouldn't be a problem, but seeing him like this, clearly on the verge of anger, they didn't dare push any further. Cyrus's women in the past didn't evoke much emotion, they were merely for satisfying desires. This was the first time he had seen Cyrus become like this for a woman. Cyrus was somewhat disoriented from drinking, so the 3 of them dared to take him home. For the next few days, Cyrus remained in low spirits. He even struggled to perform well during magazine shoots. One after another, when the agent Duke found out, he immediately went to Cyrus's lounge in the company. It was mainly Cyrus's assistant who told him that Cyrus had been staring at a chat page on his phone for a long time, with the name Catherine displayed on it. Looking at Cyrus sitting on the sofa, appearing somewhat disheveled, he raised an eyebrow and sat down beside him. He blurted out, "Do you have feelings for Catherine?" Cyrus froze for a moment, instinctively wanting to speak, but then went still again, yet suddenly having his innermost feelings exposed. It was as if he only truly understood at this moment. Agent Duke took one look at the scene and immediately grasped the situation. He patted Cyrus on the shoulder. "I told you back then not to stay with Catherine for so long. What were you going to do if you couldn't pull yourself out later? Now look at you, you've really gone and lost your heart, so tell me. What exactly happened between you two?" Cyrus hoarsely said. "She's gone." Agent Duke took a deep breath. "So it turns out you suddenly had an epiphany and developed feelings for someone else, only for them to become completely disillusioned with you." Cyrus flashed back through 8 years of memories with Catherine. Clearly Catherine had changed, yet he'd paid no attention, repeatedly hurting her while taking advantage of her love for him. "Duke, what should I do now?" The agent Duke said calmly. "What can you do? It is what it is. Since Catherine left, it means she doesn't want any ties with you. Just part ways amicably." Cyrus darkened his expression and said, "Impossible." He couldn't let go of Catherine, and only now did he realize his own feelings. As long as he made it clear to Catherine that they were together, Catherine would never leave him. How deeply she loved him, she would surely agree. The agent Duke wore a complicated expression, hesitating before speaking. "Cyrus, you'd better think carefully. Whatever comes after this, you'll have to endure it yourself." Cyrus was someone he had personally nurtured. In the end, there was some selfishness. He also wanted Cyrus to find someone he truly loved. Back when he sought out Catherine, he had advised against it, insisting it shouldn't exceed 3 years to avoid unforeseen complications. Now that the woman has left, Cyrus has instead lost his heart. He wasn't sure if Catherine was Cyrus's destined match, but he could only let Cyrus give it a try. After that day, Cyrus immediately had someone investigate Catherine to find out where she was in City A. He also tried to string the broken prayer beads back together with his own hands, but after reassembling them, they no longer carried the same feeling as when Catherine had first given them to him. Cyrus then searched online for information about these prayer beads. Reading the description online, his entire body stiffened. These prayer beads required bowing at every step to obtain, and even walking from the Lingyuan temple at the mountain's base took over 2 hours, let alone bowing at every step. He dared not think, feeling only that each breath brought pain. Yet he remembered Catherine had always told him how important these prayer beads were, yet he had never taken them seriously, treating them as nothing more than ordinary beads. That night, Cyrus slept fitfully, dreaming of Catherine pleading for the prayer beads on his behalf. In the dream, Catherine's knees were worn through her trousers, blood faintly seeping through. She gritted her teeth against the pain and pressed forward, even as gravel ground into her wounds. From dawn till dead of night, Catherine lay unconscious in a daze. Having collapsed to the ground, Cyrus's pupils contracted sharply as he instinctively cried out, "Catherine!" He suddenly woke up with a start. The sky outside was already bright. Cyrus took a deep breath, rubbed his temples, and turned slightly to look out the window. He then got up, washed his face, and drove to Lingyuan Temple with his prayer beads in hand. More than an hour later, Cyrus arrived at the foot of the mountain, looking up at the seemingly endless staircase before him. His heart trembled slightly as he recalled the dream he had last night. He took a step forward and began the ascent. With each step, he remembered Catherine praying for his prayer beads, his hand involuntarily clenching tight. Cyrus, it was already noon by the time he arrived at Lingyuan Temple. He went to find the abbot, hoping the monk could help restring the prayer beads. The abbot gazed at the beads, pressed his palms together, and slightly bowed as he said, "Sir, broken prayer beads cannot be restored." Cyrus frowned. "Why not? All you need to do is thread them back together with a string." The abbot shook his head. "No, was this prayer bead bracelet obtained by someone else for you?" "Sir." Cyrus gave a slight nod. The abbot sighed and said, "Its breaking foretells that the bond between you has also been severed." Cyrus felt his heart tighten. "It's just a prayer bead bracelet. How could its breaking sever the connection we've shared? Everything has its cause and effect. Some things truly cannot be undone." After speaking, the abbot bowed to Cyrus and left. Cyrus stood alone, his face slightly pale. He didn't believe in cause and effect. As long as he went to find Catherine, there was still a chance for everything. there had to still be a chance. 3 months later, City A. The weather turned cold quickly. Catherine wasn't quite used to it when she first arrived here, back when she and Devin finished their wedding. Devin went abroad shortly after. Just as she was preparing to return to the company, she suddenly received Mr. Paul's promotion, transferring her to work at the City A headquarters, so she didn't return to South City, but came directly from her hometown to City A. Catherine moved into the apartment prepared by the headquarters as soon as she arrived. Here, she changed her SIM card and re-registered all her social media accounts, after reconnecting with her former supervisor, familiar colleagues, and family members. She completely deactivated her previous social media accounts and phone number. She began her new life. The colleagues at the headquarters are also easy to get along with, and the leaders are all very nice. Catherine felt that coming to the headquarters was the right decision. Late at night when she was about to sleep, the doorbell suddenly rang. Catherine was startled, hesitated for a moment, and then walked toward the door. At first, she thought it might be some kind of troublemaker, but peering through the peephole, she saw a person wearing a mask and sunglasses. Yet Catherine instantly recognized it was Cyrus. Catherine paused in surprise. She never expected Cyrus to come looking for her. After all, she had already left, and someone like Cyrus wouldn't actively come looking for her. That just wasn't like him. She felt somewhat irritated, unsure why Cyrus had come. Catherine stood in the entryway for a while but didn't open the door. She returned to her room, thinking perhaps Cyrus would leave when he realized she wasn't answering. Cyrus wasn't particularly patient to begin with. Catherine lay on the bed, closed her eyes, and fell asleep instantly. Outside, the doorbell rang twice before falling silent again. Ding dong. The alarm on the phone rang. Catherine groggily opened her eyes, lazily reaching for the phone on the nightstand to turn off the alarm. After checking the time, she snuggled deeper under the covers. Winter was approaching. City A mornings were already chilly. Catherine felt particularly reluctant to leave her warm bed. After about 10 minutes, she reluctantly got up to wash up. When she came out, she changed into warmer clothes. Then she casually fried an egg, toasted 2 slices of bread, and ate them without much thought. She glanced at her phone. It was almost time for work. Changing her shoes and grabbing the bag hanging by the entrance, she opened the door, ready to head to work. But as soon as she took a step forward, her gaze fell upon a person collapsed at her doorstep. Catherine froze for a moment, then furrowed her brows. It was Cyrus. Why hadn't he left last night? Dressed so lightly in this weather, he was bound to get into trouble. After hesitating for a moment, she called out, "Cyrus," but the man on the ground showed no reaction. Catherine frowned slightly, bent down, and gently touched Cyrus, saying, "Cyrus." Cyrus didn't open his eyes, murmuring, "Catherine." Catherine also heard him call her name again, but her expression remained indifferent. She gently touched Cyrus's forehead. It was burning hot. Standing up, she thought it wouldn't be good if Cyrus had an accident at her doorstep. After all, Cyrus was a public figure, and if paparazzi caught wind of it, she might get dragged into unnecessary trouble. Catherine then searched the unconscious Cyrus's body for his phone, used his hand to unlock it, and called his assistant. A voice came through the phone. "Cyrus, where are you right now?" Catherine explained. "Cyrus is in City A and seems to have a fever now. Please come quickly." On the other end, Assistant Galen was startled. "What? I'll head over right away. Please take care of him, Ms. Catherine." The call was then hung up. Assistant Galen hurriedly messaged the agent Duke. Catherine stared at the disconnected call, pursed her lips, and suddenly felt at a loss as she looked at Cyrus. She finally took out her phone to request an hour's leave, then pulled the person onto the sofa at home and stuffed 2 fever-reducing pills into their mouth. After tucking them in with a blanket, she used Cyrus's phone to take a photo and sent it to her assistant Galen, along with the passcode to her apartment's smart lock and a location pin. Then she sent a message, "Cyrus is here. When you arrive, take them away directly. I need to get back to work, so come quickly." Catherine wouldn't take care of Cyrus. If it weren't for Cyrus having a fever this time, she might have just walked away. After all, she didn't want to have anything to do with Cyrus anymore. When it was time to get off work, the sky outside had already darkened. Catherine had just stepped out of the company building and only felt the biting cold. She quickly hailed a cab and returned to her apartment. Originally Catherine thought Cyrus had already left, but unexpectedly when she opened the door, the lights were on inside. Catherine frowned tightly. Hadn't Cyrus's assistant arrived yet? She walked in puzzled. No one was in the living room, but the sound of running water came from the bathroom. Catherine looked at the clothes Cyrus had left in the living room, her expression darkening slightly. He really made himself at home, treating her place like his own, after a moment's wait. The sound of water from the bathroom stopped, and Catherine glanced up to see Cyrus stepping out with just a towel around his waist. Eyes met, Catherine threw his clothes at him. Put them on. Cyrus simply looked at her quietly before obediently putting on the clothes. Catherine pointed to the door again. Get out. But this time, Cyrus didn't listen to her. He gazed deeply at the Catherine before him, his heart pounding wildly, and called out hoarsely, Catherine, don't send me away. Catherine ignored Cyrus's words and simply said calmly, didn't your assistant come to pick you up? Cyrus lowered his eyes slightly. He had some matters to attend to, actually. Catherine had left in the morning, and he vaguely woke up shortly after, seeing himself lying on the sofa. He was pleasantly surprised. Catherine still couldn't bear to see anything happen to him. Then his phone rang. It was his assistant, Galen, calling. He also knew that Catherine had asked Galen to come, but he didn't let Galen pick him up. Catherine crossed her arms and looked at him, her tone dismissive as she said, if he doesn't have time, and you're awake now, you can leave. She didn't want Cyrus to be here with her. Cyrus felt his heart tighten as he rose from the sofa. Grabbing Catherine and pulling her straight into his arms, Catherine struggled desperately, but Cyrus was too strong. Cyrus, what are you trying to do? For the first time, she yelled at Cyrus, her eyes involuntarily reddening. She had already distanced herself from him, so why did he have to come looking for her? Catherine now felt some regret for saving Cyrus. She should have just let him fend for himself. All she wanted was a simple, peaceful life. She truly didn't want to have anything to do with Cyrus anymore. Cyrus felt a pang in his heart before finally releasing Catherine. His deep gaze locked onto hers as he asked in a low voice, why did you lie to me? Why did you leave? Catherine took a deep breath and said, what did I lie about? This is my private life. I can go wherever I want. I called you before. You were the one who blocked me. You saw all those things. I didn't touch any of them. The money in the card hasn't been touched either. I've returned everything to you. We're done. I don't agree. What do you disagree with? Over these 8 years, at the end of the day, it was just a kept relationship, wasn't it? But I've already returned all your things. Let's just end it here. Cyrus reached out and grabbed Catherine, speaking urgently. Catherine, can we go back to how we were before? Yet the words I like you stuck in his throat. Catherine suddenly froze. Her gaze fixed on Cyrus's face. Had she heard those words in the past, she would have been too excited to sleep. But now she had let go, her heart unusually calm. She shook her head. Cyrus, need I remind you, I'm already married. As she spoke, Catherine raised her hand, displaying the wedding band on her ring finger. The glint of light reflecting off the ring pierced deep into Cyrus's eyes. Only at this moment did he suddenly realize this fact. His eyes filled with disbelief as he hoarsely asked, did you really marry someone else? Don't you want me anymore? Yes. Catherine directly cut off Cyrus's words. So please don't disturb me anymore. Cyrus looked at her resolute gaze and ultimately turned to leave. Catherine finally let out a sigh of relief. She thought, given Cyrus's temperament, he probably wouldn't come looking for her again. Catherine took a shower and then looked up the company's current client, novelist Greg, online. His reputation was big, and his background was even bigger, but his temper was the biggest of all. After reading through it all, I spent a long time without finding anything useful, just witnessing his infamous scenes of cursing people out. Catherine couldn't help but tremble slightly at the thought. Unsure if she'd even get a few words in before being shut down, she took a deep breath, trying not to overthink it, and began reading Greg's novel. Before she knew it, she was completely absorbed. She read from evening until dawn, glancing at the time to see it was already 3 a.m. She forced herself to stop reading and finally fell asleep. Outside, the sky gradually brightened. Catherine slept peacefully. Without even opening her eyes, she fumbled for her phone on the nightstand, only struggling to open them when she finally grasped it, seeing the caller ID Mr. Jack. Catherine instantly became alert and quickly answered the call. Mr. Jack, what's the matter? From the phone, Mr. Jack's hesitant voice came through. Catherine, well, today there's a movie premiere press conference for Greg. Would you like to come with me and see him first, so you can mentally prepare yourself? But don't worry, you'll be paid overtime for this, double the amount. Catherine was taken aback for a moment before finally sitting up and agreeing readily. All right. On the other end, Mr. Jack also sounded delighted. Then I'll send you the location later. Let's meet at Bayou Plaza. After hanging up the phone, she immediately received the location sent by Mr. Jack. Catherine got out of the car and saw a group of reporters entering the Bayou building inside Bayou Plaza. Catherine followed Mr. Jack inside. Greg is the author, and he didn't want significant changes to the film adaptation, so he personally reviewed every scene. Catherine looked at the movie poster above, starring Cyrus. She froze, simply not expecting it to be Cyrus who played the role. But Cyrus is an award-winning actor with great acting skills, so it's normal for others to cast him. Anyway, she came for Greg, not Cyrus, so why should she care? Mr. Jack got front row tickets, so when the actors took the stage, Catherine happened to see Cyrus, and Cyrus also met Catherine. When he saw Catherine, the corners of his lips curled slightly, and he knew Catherine wouldn't dislike him. But Catherine's gaze never lingered on Cyrus. Instead, it was fixed on Greg, who was constantly arguing with the reporters. Greg naturally noticed the gaze. Shifting his eyes slightly, he saw a sweet-faced woman staring at him with a puzzled look in her eyes. He had intended to speak, but he had never seen such an expression in her eyes before, and he genuinely wanted to know why she seemed puzzled. After it was over, Mr. Jack quietly asked Catherine, "Catherine, how was meeting Greg this time?" Catherine blinked and said, "Not bad, just like what they said online." Mr. Jack twitched the corner of his mouth. "That's it, nothing else." Catherine honestly shook her head. She truly couldn't see any difference. "So do you think we can secure this project? Have you figured out how to counter Greg?" Catherine scratched her head, thought for a moment, and finally just said, "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." She had no talent for interpersonal communication whatsoever. She could only draw what Greg wanted based on the materials he provided. Mr. Jack could see this too, so he didn't say much more. Still, it wouldn't hurt to show Catherine around a bit. The girl truly had remarkable talent. Right after joining, she completed a major project that instantly satisfied an extremely picky client. This time's Greg should be manageable too. People were gradually leaving, but Catherine needed to use the restroom. After telling Mr. Jack, she went to look for one. She didn't find the restroom but instead ran into Cyrus first. He looked at Catherine, his tone cheerful. "Catherine, did you come here just to see me?" Catherine completely ignored Cyrus and turned to leave, but her hand was caught at that moment. Cyrus gripped her hand tightly, rendering her struggles futile. Just as the two were locked in confrontation, Catherine's phone suddenly rang with an incoming call. "It's Devin calling." Seeing this name, Cyrus couldn't help but curl his lips into a faint smile. "Devin, that's the husband you mentioned, right? I've done my research. You never actually registered your marriage, just held a wedding ceremony." These words sent Catherine a chill down her spine. She indeed didn't register a marriage certificate with Devin, only held a wedding ceremony. This was what they agreed upon from the start, a one-year trial period. When the time came, they would announce to both families that they were divorcing due to irreconcilable differences. But all these concerns had dissipated after they spent time getting to know each other. They decided to genuinely connect during this year, and if feelings developed, they would register their marriage after the year ended. But Cyrus's expression sent a ripple of unease through her. Catherine immediately answered the call. On the other end, Devin's voice carried unprecedented remorse. "Catherine, I'm sorry, I won't be able to return to the country for a while." "What happened?" Catherine asked, her heart leaping into her throat. But Devin just went on by himself. "I'm sorry, and about our agreement to get the marriage license in a year, consider it void. Let's stick to our original plan and tell our families we're divorced after a year." After dropping this bombshell and offering another apology, Devin hung up the phone directly, leaving a completely bewildered Catherine behind. Until Cyrus beside her burst out laughing. "See, the person you picked is just like that." A single sentence made Catherine realize something. She glared coldly at Cyrus. "What did you do?" Her eyes burned with unmistakable hostility. Cyrus paused briefly, then curled his lips into a cold smile. "I didn't need to do much. I just investigated him and conveniently delivered his ex-girlfriend back to him." "Catherine, if he truly wanted to be with you, he wouldn't waver because of an ex-girlfriend. Why can't you see reason?" Cyrus's every word shocked Catherine. She didn't want to believe what Cyrus said, yet she couldn't explain Devin's sudden change either. Catherine replied coldly, "This is my business, stay out of it. I only want to hear it from him directly." With that, she turned and walked away without hesitation. Yet at the corner, she bumped into Greg, dressed in a white suit with an air of nonchalance. Greg, holding a cigarette between his fingers, spread his hands and said, "I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, you were just too loud." Catherine bit her lip, offered no reply, and strode off. After the weekend passed, Catherine was still a bit nervous at work. After all, this time she had to face Greg directly. No one knew what Greg would say. In the meeting room, Catherine looked at the man in front of her. She sat up straight, holding her laptop, ready to record Greg's words. Greg looked at Catherine's earnest expression and suddenly felt that this time she might actually deliver a satisfactory manuscript. Catherine spoke softly. Mr. Greg, what are your requirements? Could you tell me? In the past, Greg would have wanted to scold her, as he had already told them so many times, but looking at the seemingly obedient girl before him, Greg once again explained his requirements, illustrations that matched the characters in his book. Catherine asked, then, Mr. Greg, could you show me the novel you've written this time? Greg hadn't expected Catherine to ask him for the novel. He was happy to give the novel to Catherine, though it was just a manuscript. He enjoyed writing manuscripts, a habit he'd maintained for years. By afternoon, Catherine had the manuscript in hand. After work, Catherine carried a thick manuscript home. Just as she reached the door, she ran into Cyrus again. Catherine really felt that Cyrus was like a lingering ghost, since when had he become so free with his time? Cyrus saw Catherine, his gaze softening noticeably. Just as he was about to speak, he noticed the stack of papers in Catherine's arms, bearing Greg's name. His face darkened. Catherine, when did you get involved with Greg again? Catherine thought Cyrus was being absurd, coming to her house just to ask about her relationship with Greg. What does it have to do with you? Cyrus pressed his lips together, his gaze fixed on Catherine. Catherine could tell at a glance that he was angry, but what right did he have to be? They were already over. Cyrus really thought she would comfort him. He was truly delusional. Catherine ignored Cyrus and went straight to opening the door to enter her home. She had already changed the password on the smart lock at home the day Cyrus left. She was afraid that if she hadn't changed it, Cyrus would open the door and be waiting for her inside. Cyrus wanted to come in. Catherine turned around and said to him directly, Mr. Cyrus, if you come in, I won't hesitate to call the property management. Cyrus froze mid-step, then withdrew his foot. Catherine was about to close the door when she saw Cyrus pull back. The next moment, Cyrus reached out to stop her. Wait. Catherine raised an eyebrow slightly. Catherine, I'm going back to South City for a few days. Catherine found Cyrus inexplicable and replied indifferently. Then go back. Why tell me? Cyrus wanted to say something but hesitated, unsure how to begin. Catherine couldn't be bothered to talk to Cyrus any longer and simply shut the door. After the door closed, Cyrus remained standing outside for a long time before finally leaving. Meanwhile, Catherine casually cooked herself dinner, and after eating, began reading the novel Greg had given her. Following both Greg's instructions and the descriptions in the novel, she sketched out a rough outline. By the time she finished all this, it was almost midnight. Catherine quickly took a shower and went to bed. In her free time, Catherine couldn't help but think of Devin. After that phone call, Devin sent her a long string of messages. The explanation was no different from what Cyrus had said. Devin had indeed run into his ex-girlfriend, and truth be told, he still couldn't forget her. They had already gotten back together. Devin said he would handle the pressure from the elders at home, so she didn't need to worry about it. In the end, all he had left was an apology. Catherine looked at him and replied, "It's okay." From then on, she completely cut off contact with Devin. Fortunately, she hadn't invested too much emotion yet. She could still pull back in time. Over the next 3 days, Catherine immersed herself in work, perfected the draft, and sent it to Greg. In the office, Mr. Jack looked at the draft and asked uncertainly, "Catherine, are you sure this will really work?" Catherine nodded and said, "Mr. Jack, you can send it to Greg for a look." Mr. Jack hesitated for a long time before finally sending it to Greg. Their company had done similar things before, and one more attempt like Catherine's wouldn't hurt. Besides, this was their last chance. If it worked, it would be like striking gold. Mr. Jack asked Catherine to step out first and wait until Greg replied before calling her back in. After coming out, Catherine returned to her workstation, but within minutes, her phone rang. She glanced at it. It was a friend request with a note saying Greg. Catherine picked up her phone and agreed without hesitation. She saw Greg send a message, "I'm very satisfied with your draft." Catherine immediately replied, "Glad to hear Mr. Greg is satisfied. Greg, MS, Catherine. Could we meet tomorrow to chat?" Catherine thought for a moment before replying, "Of course." Then Greg sent her the address of a coffee shop. The next day, the temperature suddenly dropped significantly. Snowflakes began to fall outside the window. Catherine pulled out her thickest down jacket and wrapped herself in a scarf before heading to the coffee shop. After meeting, she began explaining the concept behind her draft. Greg found himself liking it even more. "You're the first to create illustrations that truly connect with my novel. You've actually read my work carefully." Catherine smiled and said sincerely, "Mr. Greg writes wonderful novels. I truly enjoy reading them. Consider me your newest fan." Greg looked at Catherine before him. I'm treating you to dinner, don't say no. After all, I dragged you out in this snowy weather just to discuss the manuscript. Catherine couldn't bring herself to refuse and agreed. But the moment they stepped out of the cafe, they ran straight into a scowling Cyrus. Catherine had no intention of paying attention and simply walked out with Greg. Moreover, Cyrus didn't even bother to disguise himself. If paparazzi caught him, wouldn't that implicate her? Greg also spotted Cyrus. He narrowed his eyes slightly, sizing up the man before him. Just what was the relationship between this Cyrus and Catherine? Cyrus finished his business and immediately went to find Catherine. But when he arrived at her home, there was no response. Checking the time, he realized it was her workday, so he headed to her company. He had originally hoped to have lunch with Catherine at noon, as it had been a long time since he last saw her, and he genuinely wanted to meet her. But when he asked around, he found out Catherine wasn't at the company, she was out with a client. Cyrus frowned at this. Back in South City, she never had to accompany any clients, and as an illustrator, why would she even need to? Something about it felt off to him. So he had someone look into it and eventually traced her to this coffee shop. The moment she saw it was Greg, an inexplicable rage surged up, making her wish she could tear him apart. Catherine was passing by Cyrus when her hand was suddenly grabbed. Her heart clenched. She should have known Cyrus was capable of anything. But it had been so long since she left Cyrus, she hadn't even thought about it anymore. Catherine tilted her head slightly to look at Cyrus and whispered, "Let go," yet Cyrus only tightened his grip. Meanwhile, intermittent click-click-click sounds echoed not far away. The next moment, Greg grabbed Cyrus directly. "Mr. Cyrus, she already told you to let go. Don't pretend you don't understand human speech." Cyrus fixed Greg with a deep, cold stare and said sharply, "What does this have to do with you? This is between her and me. An outsider like you has no right to interfere." Greg asked in a leisurely tone, "So what are you to her?" Cyrus paused before replying, "Family." Catherine felt somewhat displeased. She didn't need Cyrus to acknowledge anything, she just wanted to stay away from him and live quietly. She said indifferently, "Mr. Cyrus, don't speak nonsense. We have no relationship at all, just ordinary strangers." Cyrus called her name with some urgency. "Catherine." Catherine showed no reaction, staring at him with an indifferent expression. "If you don't let go, I'll call the police." "Cyrus, don't think I won't do it. When your fans find out, imagine what they'll think of you." Since deciding to leave, she was no longer the pushover she once was, letting Cyrus manipulate her at will. Cyrus pressed his lips together, his gaze complex as it met Catherine's, but her expression remained unchanged. After a moment of hesitation, he released his grip. Catherine tugged at Greg's sleeve and walked away without looking back. In the parking lot, Catherine apologetically said to Greg, "Mr. Greg, I'm sorry you had to see that embarrassing scene." Greg chuckled lightly and said, "It's all right. Let's finalize this version for the collaborative manuscript." After the two finished speaking, Catherine noticed Greg showed no intention of getting in the car to leave and was about to speak. But Greg spoke first. "Let me treat you to a meal. Earlier at the cafe, I saw you eyeing the pastries on other people's tables. You must be hungry." Catherine blushed, wishing she could vanish into the ground at that moment. She was genuinely hungry, and with the weather like this, body heat was lost too easily, making her even hungrier. Catherine was about to refuse when Greg suddenly leaned closer and whispered, "I just saw Cyrus seemingly following us. If you leave alone, you might get pestered by him again." Catherine swallowed her words of refusal instantly and agreed directly. The meal turned out to be delightful for her, filled with delicious food. By the time she returned, it was already evening. She waited until Greg's car drove away before heading upstairs. "As soon as I stepped out of the elevator, a dark figure suddenly darted out." Catherine was startled, her breath catching in her throat. Seeing the angry man before her, she also let out a sigh of relief. The moment she stepped off the elevator, she had thought she'd encountered a thief. Cyrus fixed his gaze on Catherine, his tone laced with jealousy. "Did you enjoy your meal with Greg?" Yet he had no memory of them going out to eat together, which only deepened his displeasure. But as he reflected on past events, he dared not harbor any resentment. After all, wasn't this situation entirely of his own making? What right does he have to be unhappy? What does this have to do with you? Please let go. Catherine truly didn't expect Cyrus to be so persistent. What exactly does he want to do? Cyrus doesn't want to. But at that moment, his phone rang. He originally intended to hang up, but seeing the caller ID showed it was his agent Duke, he had no choice but to answer. Agent Duke's exasperated voice came through. "Cyrus, how dare you go out without a mask or sunglasses? Get back to the hotel right now. Cyrus hesitated for a moment before replying. Duke, help me handle this. But the other party's tone didn't relent. It's difficult for me to handle. You must come back. Catherine, though unaware of their conversation, immediately seized the moment when Cyrus was distracted, broke free from Cyrus, and quickly slipped into the house. By the time Cyrus realized what had happened, she was already inside. Cyrus stared at the doorway, phone in hand, and said, I'll head back now. After hanging up the phone, he stared at the doorway for a long time before reluctantly leaving. Cyrus drove back to the hotel, where his agent Duke was already waiting for him. Once inside the room, he sat on the sofa and asked, Duke, what's going on? Agent Duke threw several photos onto the table and said with exasperation, I can turn a blind eye to your affairs with Catherine, but this time you've gone too far. How could you dare to go out like this without any disguise? And to be seen entangled with Catherine, you're practically inviting the paparazzi to take photos openly. You're not an ordinary person, you're an award-winning actor. How do you expect your fans to see you now? Cyrus leaned back on the sofa, his expression unchanged, and calmly asked, how much do they want? Is this really about money? After what happened during your outing, they'll probably follow you everywhere from now on. The best solution is for you to join a film crew during this period. I've already picked a script for you, it's the type you like. Cyrus flatly refused. I can't join any crew right now. If he joins the production, he wouldn't be able to see Catherine for months, maybe even half a year. Who knows what could happen in that time? And now with Greg suddenly appearing, there's no way he could feel at ease. The agent Duke nearly choked on his breath when he heard Cyrus's words. Then what do you want to do? I don't interfere with your affairs with Catherine, but this is going too far. Cyrus crossed his legs, half closed his eyes, and after a moment of contemplation, spoke, then let it come out. They'll find out eventually anyway. The agent Duke was on the verge of tears. I think you just enjoy tormenting me. This can't be revealed now, and your relationship with Catherine, what if she gets provoked and decides to expose something? I told you this needs to be done step by step. Unless you successfully pursue that person, this matter absolutely cannot be exposed. I'll handle the paparazzi side of things. You should think carefully too. With that, he left the room, giving Cyrus space to reflect. He believed Cyrus wasn't incapable of understanding. In the end, Cyrus sent a message to his manager Duke, instructing him to proceed as discussed. He would pay attention to it himself from now on. Agent Duke took a step back. Since Cyrus wasn't willing to join the production team, they could just record a variety show first to get through these few days. Cyrus agreed as well. Catherine noticed that Cyrus hadn't come to harass her these past few days, and her mood had improved considerably after landing Greg's big order this time. The company team-building trip went to Sonia. On the shores of Sonia, Catherine was sunbathing when two young guys approached from not far away. One of them hesitated for a moment, took out his phone, and said to her, Miss, can I get your contact info? Catherine froze for a moment, then reached for her phone, about to say yes, but a familiar voice came from behind. She has a boyfriend. The young man looked disappointed and quickly left with his companion. Catherine immediately said, I don't have a boyfriend. The young man had just spotted Catherine and the man behind her, though the other wore sunglasses. That icy gaze was unmistakably fixed on him. Whether this beauty was taken or not, he didn't dare approach anymore. Catherine sighed involuntarily after speaking, watching as the person still walked away. A gloomy voice sounded, heartbroken you didn't get his number. Catherine clenched her fists. She truly felt Cyrus was like a haunting ghost. What right did he have to control her? She turned to face the well-armed man, clenched her teeth, and finally pushed past him. Conversations with Cyrus always revolved around the same few phrases. She had nothing to say, and Cyrus wouldn't listen anyway. Why waste her breath? Cyrus called out to Catherine, saying, Catherine, I've figured it out. I'll give you an explanation. Catherine paid no attention to Cyrus's words and quickly walked away. Cyrus watched Catherine's retreating figure. These past few days of filming the variety show here had introduced him to a married couple, which helped clarify one thing in his mind since he liked Catherine. Why should he be too afraid to say it? Perhaps if he bared his feelings, Catherine would forgive him. Catherine's good mood for the day was utterly ruined by Cyrus. She returned to the hotel and didn't come out again. While scrolling through her phone, she happened to come across behind-the-scenes footage of Cyrus filming the variety show. She couldn't help but resent herself for not seeing it before the team-building event. Then she wouldn't have come to Sonia at all, on the very first day here. I ran into Cyrus. Catherine truly felt she was out of luck. In her room, she started reading Greg's novel. Greg had mentioned he'd hire her for the next illustrations. She wanted to see what style Greg was mainly going for, plus, his novels were so well written they never bored her, a perfect way to pass the time. After looking at just a few, Catherine received a message from Greg, MS. Catherine, I have a short story I finished a few years ago but never published. I've been organizing it these past few days and thought about adding some illustrations. Would MS. Catherine be willing to take on this job? Catherine replied without hesitation, of course I would. There was money to be made, how could she possibly refuse? She wasn't a fool. On the phone, Greg texted again. Can we meet face to face tomorrow? Catherine sent an apologetic emoji in response, then replied, Mr. Greg, I'm sorry, our company is currently in a team building period. It'll be about 14 days before I return. After sending this message, seeing no immediate reply, she panicked, fearing Greg might change his mind, but the next second, Greg replied, where? Catherine didn't hide it, Sonia. Then Greg politely responded, alright, have fun then. We'll talk about work when you're back. Catherine read the following words and felt relieved. At least this collaboration was saved. Catherine felt drowsy as she looked at her phone and soon fell asleep. When she woke up again, the sky outside the window had turned dark. She rubbed her eyes and picked up her phone, only to find several messages from her colleague. Catherine replied that she had just woken up and wouldn't be attending the bonfire party being held there. She was still somewhat sleepy, lacking energy, and didn't want to dampen everyone's spirits. Catherine got up, left the room, and went downstairs to eat something. Just as she was enjoying her meal, she saw Cyrus's assistant Galen approaching. With a grim expression, he said to her, MS. Catherine, Cyrus is in trouble. Will you come with me to see him? Catherine glanced over and replied leisurely, if he's in trouble, go to the hospital. What do you need me for? The assistant Galen hesitated and said, he wants to see you, otherwise, he refuses to go to the hospital. MS. Catherine, you know Cyrus is a public figure. If something happens, it'll definitely make headlines again. Catherine put down her chopsticks. What does that have to do with me? Don't come looking for me anymore. She got up and left directly. She had been quite happy earlier, but now she didn't even have an appetite for food. Catherine was about to return to her room. On the way, she was suddenly pulled into a room. The room was dim, with candles arranged in the shape of a heart on the floor, and red roses beside them. Cyrus stood before Catherine holding a bouquet of red roses, gazing at Catherine with tender eyes. Catherine, I like you. Give me another chance, okay? Catherine looked at the elegantly dressed Cyrus in his suit, her expression calm. After a long pause, she frowned slightly and responded softly, but Cyrus, I don't like you anymore. Cyrus felt it, his heart twinging, as he tried to press the red roses into Catherine's arms, but Catherine made no move to take them. She looked up at Cyrus's face and said earnestly, Cyrus, we can't be together. From the moment she decided to leave Cyrus, they would never be together again. If only Cyrus had confessed his feelings to her back then, she would have agreed with joy in her heart. But now it's impossible. She has more or less let go of Cyrus in her heart, since there's no fate between them. It's better not to cling to it any longer. Cyrus dropped what he was holding and grasped Catherine's arms. Can't you give me just one chance? You loved me so much before, and now I understand I have feelings for you, Catherine said flatly. You say you like me after I'm gone, Cyrus. You just can't accept the fact that I'm leaving. If you really liked me, you would have confessed during those 8 years, not waited until now. Cyrus pleaded urgently. I just didn't understand my heart before, but now I do. Catherine, I won't let you down this time. Cyrus, you don't understand your heart, but you know mine. I'm tired now, there's no way for us. As the words fell, Catherine raised her hand and pushed Cyrus away. Back then, she had followed Cyrus for 8 years without a second thought, their relationship ambiguous and unclear, all of it her own doing, hoping that one day Cyrus would fall in love with her, but now that day had come. And she just felt so tired. She no longer liked him, and if she had to fall in love with the same person again, she couldn't do it. Catherine simply opened the door and walked out. Cyrus wanted to chase after her, but found himself unable to take a single step forward. His heart was so tightly clenched with bitterness at this moment. Clenching his fists, he had been utterly confident while making arrangements that Catherine would agree. After all, she'd followed him for 8 years. Didn't that prove she loved him? Yet he'd never dared imagine she truly didn't love him, that she would abandon him. He suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart, making it hard to breathe. After leaving the room, Catherine returned to her own room and collapsed weakly onto the bed. She had said everything. Cyrus probably wouldn't bother her anymore. At least, Cyrus was the type who wouldn't follow her if she refused. Catherine drifted off to sleep, thinking of happier things. Early morning. The chirping of birds outside woke Catherine. She had slept yesterday, slept through the night, and now she was fully rested. Catherine ran into a colleague just as she was going down for breakfast. She ended up having breakfast with the colleague, being led along in a daze without knowing where they were headed. Suddenly, a colleague said, "There's a lucky draw event up ahead. I heard it's for a variety show being filmed here. The draw is organized by the production team to promote the show. If you win first prize, you can take a photo with a celebrity. Let's go check it out." Catherine didn't even have time to speak before being dragged away. By the time she realized what was happening, she had already been brought to the lucky draw area. Just as she looked up, she saw Cyrus not far away, watching her. Catherine had no intention of leaving anymore. If Cyrus found out how she planned to go, she feared he might misunderstand, so why not try her luck in a draw? Her luck had always been terrible, there was no way she'd win. All the colleagues had drawn Catherine, so she also picked one. When opening it, sighs of disappointment arose around her. This thing was indeed hard to draw well. There was no way she could get it. Catherine, when she unfolded the paper, there was a 5-point star on it. Not understanding what it meant, she handed it to the staff member in front and asked, "Hello, what is this?" Seeing the paper with a 5-point star handed by Catherine, the staff member smiled and announced loudly, "Miss, you've won the grand prize." Catherine was momentarily stunned. The grand prize, right? The other colleagues were thrilled beyond words, though they hadn't won anything themselves, since Catherine was their co-worker. By extension, it felt like they'd won too. So what's the grand prize gift? The staff member pointed at Cyrus with a smile and said to Catherine, "You can take a photo with Mr. Cyrus." Catherine had initially thought there might be something more substantial, but it turned out to be just a photo with Cyrus. She wasn't the least bit interested in that. She asked, "Who wants to go?" A colleague looked at Catherine and said, "Catherine, aren't you going? This is Mr. Cyrus we're talking about." Catherine shook her head. "No, I'm not a fan of his." Not far away, Cyrus, who had studied lip reading for some time, immediately understood Catherine's words. His expression changed, and he promptly called over a staff member. Catherine was still in discussion when a staff member approached and said, "Miss, only the lottery winner is allowed to take photos." As soon as this happened, she naturally understood it was Cyrus pulling the strings behind the scenes. Catherine didn't hold back either. "If we can't change the person, then we won't shoot. Let's go." The other colleagues froze for a moment before nodding. Since the staff refused to replace the person, they would just leave after all. There wasn't much fun here besides the prize draw. Cyrus grew even more upset after they left. Did she really dislike seeing him that much? Catherine went to play nearby with her colleagues after spending some time at the beach. Then she went to open some shells, but her luck suddenly turned sour. Her colleague couldn't help but tease. Catherine's luck must have been all used up in the lottery earlier. Now there aren't even a few good pearls coming out. Catherine sighed. Maybe so, this luck wasn't in the right place. Her colleagues were all amused by what she said. Only Catherine felt somewhat unlucky, wondering why she couldn't win what she wanted but ended up getting what she didn't. However, when leaving, Catherine still took away a very beautiful pearl. She had originally planned to join everyone for a meal, but suddenly felt her period coming. After checking in the restroom, it turned out to be true. Catherine had no choice but to return to the hotel to change clothes. Let them enjoy themselves after all. It would take her some time to get back to the hotel. The dining spot was also quite far, and she likely wouldn't make it in time. Plus, with her period cramps acting up, it was better to just rest at home. Everyone also took care of Catherine, letting her go back to rest. They promised to bring her some food when they returned. Just got out of the car. Catherine was just about to leave when Cyrus stealthily appeared before her. Wrapped in secrecy, she felt somewhat annoyed. Ever since she arrived here, Cyrus had been coming to see her almost every day. Hadn't she made herself clear enough? Even last night's conversation had been explicit, yet he still came. This was completely unlike him. Catherine ignored Cyrus's presence. The most important thing for her now was to deal with her period. Cyrus saw her about to leave and hurriedly called out, "Catherine, wait a moment." But Catherine didn't stop. Walking straight ahead, Cyrus could only chase after her. Catherine felt a warm flow continuously running down her lower abdomen as she walked swiftly. Cyrus, noticing her pale complexion, asked anxiously, "What's wrong with you?" Catherine wasn't originally annoyed, but upon hearing Cyrus's words, she snapped irritably, "Your presence here is making me unhappy. Could you please leave?" Cyrus was genuinely worried Catherine might be in trouble and said calmly, "This is no time for jokes. Where exactly are you feeling unwell?" Catherine truly didn't want to deal with him and strode briskly into the hotel, Behind her, Cyrus noticed her white pants had turned red and immediately understood the situation. Cyrus said nothing more and left directly. Catherine couldn't be bothered either and quickly returned to her room, only then feeling relieved that she hadn't prepared sanitary pads. She called the front desk to ask them to deliver sanitary pads. After hanging up the phone, there was a knock at the door. Catherine was taken aback. So soon, she still went to open the door, just a crack, but saw Cyrus, his brows slightly furrowed. "Mr. Cyrus, what's the matter?" Cyrus handed over a large black bag. His eyes avoiding Catherine, he simply said, "Sanitary pads, I didn't know which brand you prefer, so I bought them all." Catherine looked at the black bag Cyrus handed her, hesitating whether to take it. After all, she really needed the pads. But just then, a waiter approached from nearby, holding sanitary pads in their hand. She knew they were for her, so Catherine refused Cyrus, saying, "No need to trouble Mr. Cyrus, I have sanitary pads." As she spoke, she walked out and saw the approaching waiter. The waiter handed her the sanitary pads. "Here's what you need." Catherine took it and said, "Thank you." The waiter then left, but when Catherine turned around to speak to Cyrus, Cyrus was already gone, leaving only the black bag at her doorstep. Cyrus knew the moment he saw the waiter that no amount of talking would help, so when Catherine turned to receive the sanitary pads, he simply placed the items on the ground and left. Catherine stared at the black bag on the floor, pursed her lips, and finally took it inside. It would be a waste to throw these away now. Since that's the case, she'd find an opportunity to distribute them to those who could use them. After all, she couldn't possibly use up this large bag within the month, and there was no way she could take it back with her. Catherine grabbed some sanitary pads and went to take a hot shower. She couldn't possibly go without washing up. Her lower body was completely soaked. After showering, she collapsed onto the bed, utterly unable to move a muscle. "I drifted off to sleep in a daze. By the time I woke up, it was already the next day." Catherine was starving. After a quick wash-up, she went downstairs to grab something to eat. As she stepped out of the elevator, she caught sight of someone in her peripheral vision, just as she was about to dodge. The other person showed no intention of avoiding her and collided directly with her. Catherine lost her balance and fell to the ground. Before she could even react, she heard an accusatory voice. "What's wrong with you? Didn't you see my Kelly? Look at Kelly's clothes, they're all torn from the collision." Catherine looked up and saw Kelly, who had also fallen to the ground, her clothes indeed torn. She frowned slightly, but Kelly could have avoided it. Instead, she didn't dodge and deliberately collided. This was clearly premeditated. Kelly's assistant, seeing that Catherine remained silent, raised her voice even louder. "Can't you be more careful? This outfit Kelly is wearing is extremely expensive. You could never afford to replace it. What do you plan to do about this now?" Kelly propped herself up, looking innocent as she said, "Don't speak like that. This lady didn't mean to do it. If we just explain it to the director, we can all chip in to cover the cost." Catherine still didn't say a word, as a sharp pain was now gripping her stomach. Kelly's assistant spotted the director of their variety show recording from a distance and quickly called out to him, "Mr. Jerry, could you come over here for a moment?" Mr. Jerry walked over in confusion, but when he saw the clothes on Kelly, his face turned as black as charcoal. "What's going on here? Didn't I say to take good care of these clothes? They're worth over 100 million. Can you even afford to compensate for this?" Kelly's assistant pointed at Catherine and said, "Mr. Jerry, it's not Kelly's fault. This person wasn't watching where they were going and just bumped right into Kelly." Mr. Jerry saw that it was just a passerby who had caused the collision. There wasn't much he could say, since the other party had no idea how expensive Kelly's clothes were, but the money would still have to be paid. "Miss, since you've knocked someone over, let's have a talk." Catherine looked rather pale, too weak from the pain to speak. She didn't understand why it hurt so much this time. Mr. Jerry grew impatient when she remained silent. "Miss, you can't just avoid this. If you don't speak up, we'll have no choice but to call the police." A slow, deliberate voice chimed in. "Call the police? You say, do tell me more." Span. Everyone turned to look as Greg approached. Mr. Jerry certainly knew Greg and immediately bent down to greet him. "Mr. Greg, long time no see." Greg glanced over. "Have we met before?" Mr. Jerry replied with an apologetic smile. "I even toasted you at the film festival last time." "Oh, don't recall that." Mr. Jerry didn't show any displeasure either, just kept smiling. Kelly had met Greg, but she only thought of him as a novelist and couldn't understand why they treated Greg with such reverence. Greg saw Catherine on the ground. His expression changed instantly as he scooped her up. Noticing her pale face, he said to those present, "If it's about her, come to me." As soon as he finished speaking, another voice chimed in. What do you mean, come to you? Cyrus rushed over in a panic upon hearing about Catherine's accident, only to find Greg here. Instantly sparking jealousy in his heart, he glared at Kelly and demanded, what happened? Kelly was startled. Did Cyrus have some connection with this woman? What if they found out? Cyrus saw that Kelly remained silent and asked coldly, what exactly happened? Kelly's assistant immediately stepped forward. Mr. Cyrus, this person wasn't looking where they were going when exiting the elevator and bumped into Kelly, ruining her clothes. Cyrus turned and noticed Catherine's pale expression. Growing even angrier, his eyes darkened as he stared at Kelly and asked again, are you sure that's what happened? She bumped into you. Kelly clenched her hands in the shadows. She had no choice but to stand her ground now. Yes, Cyrus didn't mince words and said directly, in that case, I'll cover the cost. As he spoke, he looked at Mr. Jerry. Mr. Jerry, is that all right? Mr. Jerry was now somewhat bewildered, mainly because Greg had just spoken up, and now Cyrus was also involved. This girl's identity seemed unusual. She actually knew both of them. What's more, both men were willing to compensate for her. Recovered, Catherine tugged at Greg's sleeve, signaling she wanted down. Greg suddenly lifted her up. She had been frightened just moments before. Greg understood Catherine's meaning and carefully set her down. Catherine steadied herself and said, it wasn't me who crashed into her. She had every chance to avoid it but chose not to. Kelly's assistant snapped as if she'd swallowed gunpowder. Don't you dare falsely accuse others. It's clearly your fault. Why won't you admit it? These two gentlemen have even offered to help you, yet you're being utterly ungrateful. Originally, Kelly had tried to stop her assistant, but failing to do so, she had no choice but to let her speak. But upon hearing her assistant's words, her vision darkened with frustration. Catherine pointed at a nearby surveillance camera and said, there's a camera right there. If none of you believe me, just check the footage. It's not her fault. Why should she spend this money? Kelly's mind went blank with a sudden shock. She had checked before. There were no cameras, so how could there be one now? She followed Catherine's pointing finger to a hidden corner. If you didn't look carefully, you wouldn't notice anything at all. Kelly tugged at her assistant's hand and then spoke up. It might be my fault. My assistant overreacted. As for the dress, Mr. Jerry, I'll find a way to compensate for it. It has nothing to do with this young lady. The moment these words were spoken, everyone understood the implication. Mr. Jerry didn't want to escalate the tension either, so he said, in that case, I'll help negotiate the price for you. Kelly smiled and said, really? Then thank you, Mr. Jerry. But at this moment, Greg suddenly interjected, what do you mean maybe it's your fault, since you're so unwilling to admit it? I think reviewing the surveillance footage is absolutely necessary, otherwise, I'll sue you for defamation. Kelly suddenly reddened her eyes and looked at Greg. Mr. Greg, I've already admitted it. Why can't you just let me go? Greg wore a disgusted expression. Are you a whore, putting on this act for every man you see? Kelly was instantly stunned, her face flushing red and pale in turns, wishing she could kill Greg. How dare he speak to her like that, Mr. Jerry suddenly gave Kelly a look. Greg was someone they couldn't afford to provoke. If they wanted to stay in this circle, they had to avoid crossing Greg. Kelly, after all, having climbed to the position of a rising starlet, she naturally knew how to read the room and didn't dare speak up. Mr. Jerry said to Catherine, Miss, look, you don't have to pay compensation. Let's just let this matter pass. Catherine shook her head. No, I want them to apologize to me. She couldn't afford to take the loss. Mr. Jerry immediately agreed. All right. Kelly and the assistant also had no choice but to reluctantly apologize. Sorry. The farce thus came to an end. Catherine clutched her stomach and went off to get something to eat. Greg and Cyrus both stepped forward simultaneously to support Catherine. Their eyes met. Cyrus carried a sinister air, while Greg simply looked on with disdain. Greg ultimately didn't reach out to support Catherine. Merely standing by, Cyrus reached out his hand, but Catherine dodged it effortlessly. She looked at Cyrus and said, Mr. Cyrus, you shouldn't be here. It's time for you to leave. If she showed up at the dining spot with Cyrus by her side, wouldn't that cause a huge uproar? Just then, Cyrus's assistant, Galen, hurried over and said, Cyrus, recording is about to start. Let's go now. Without waiting for Cyrus's response, he immediately pulled Cyrus away. The agent Duke told him to minimize contact with Ms. Catherine. Last night, he specifically mentioned to Duke that Ms. Catherine was also in Sonia for their company retreat. Duke almost fainted upon hearing this. He had originally arranged for Cyrus to take on variety shows to avoid seeing Catherine, But now it seemed unavoidable. What a cursed fate they shared. All he could do was have his assistant Galen keep an eye on Cyrus. Cyrus left, and Catherine let out a sigh of relief. Good riddance. She turned to look at Greg and said, Mr. Greg, are you here in Sonia to handle some business? No, I just came out of boredom. It's been a while since I last visited. When I saw your message, I thought I'd come and have some fun. Catherine nodded slightly. Greg cast a glance at Catherine and asked, Catherine, are you feeling unwell? You looked quite pale just now. Do you need to see a doctor? It's just some menstrual cramps, nothing serious. After arriving in City A, she experienced some menstrual pain, likely due to not being quite accustomed to City A's weather. She decided she'd need to wear more layers for warmth after this trip back. Greg lowered his eyes slightly before changing the subject. How has Catherine been enjoying her time here? Catherine answered honestly, not bad. Though I haven't really gone out much. Greg invited, when Catherine feels better, we can go out together. Okay. Catherine hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Alright, after all, she still needed to discuss work with Greg. It wouldn't be proper to refuse him. Catherine and Greg had a meal together. The two parted ways at the restaurant. That evening, Catherine's phone suddenly rang. It was a call from a colleague. Catherine answered it, hearing the urgent voice on the other end. Catherine, have you seen the trending topics? Catherine was confused. What? It's related to you. Why didn't you tell us about what happened this morning? We all believe you're not that kind of person. Catherine grew more bewildered as she listened, then excused herself to her colleague and hung up first. Then she saw the trending topic, #Kelly's tearful complaint #. She clicked in and saw a video, which basically recounted the morning's incident. Just a few sentences had shifted all the blame onto her. Someone had dug up her photos, mainly Kelly has many fans, and suddenly her phone starts ringing one after another. Catherine is momentarily at a loss about what to do, but then suddenly remembers the surveillance footage, though how is she supposed to obtain it? She stares at Kelly's video, lips pressed tightly together. Kelly knows all too well how to manipulate public opinion. And with their differing statuses, she truly can't clarify things online. Catherine ends up dialing the police directly. The police arrived quickly. Catherine told them everything, along with the surveillance footage. Then she went with the police to the station to assist with the investigation. Shortly after arriving at the station, Catherine opened her phone and saw another trending topic, #Cyrus Greg proves innocence of amateur #. She clicked to take a look. It was just them speaking up for her. But without evidence, these claims couldn't truly prove anything. Catherine waited obediently at the police station for the results. Finally, the police said to her, Catherine, rest assured, we will release the video to prove your innocence. Catherine bowed and said gratefully, thank you. The next second, an official account released a video that instantly shifted all the public opinion onto Kelly. Catherine glanced at the time. It was already 1 a.m. She wondered how to get back, as it was so late that taking a taxi alone didn't seem safe. Suddenly, someone called out to her, Catherine. Catherine turned her head slightly and saw Greg hurriedly walking in. He looked nervous, but upon seeing Catherine unharmed, he let out a sigh of relief. Catherine was somewhat puzzled and asked, Mr. Greg, what brings you here? Greg walked up to her and explained, I was worried you might be affected by what happened online, so I went looking for you. On my way, I overheard people talking about cameras and that you'd gone to the police station, so I came here. Catherine felt a warmth in her heart upon hearing Greg's words. She looked up with a smile and said, Mr. Greg, thank you, I'm fine, and the online issue has been resolved. Just as her words faded, another urgent voice called out, Catherine. Cyrus walked in quickly with a grim expression. Upon seeing Catherine, he immediately apologized. I'm sorry, this is my fault. I shouldn't have had Kelly blacklisted, otherwise, she wouldn't have been driven to such desperate measures. He originally just wanted to help Catherine out, so he had Duke hire paparazzi to expose Kelly's scandals. What she did was enough to get her blacklisted. Duke tried to persuade him for a long time, but he wouldn't listen, and that's how things ended up like this. Catherine said calmly, the matter is resolved now. As for what happens to Kelly later, it's none of her business. But if Kelly doesn't handle her own affairs and insists on dragging her down, she probably shouldn't expect her to lend a helping hand. That would be pure wishful thinking. Cyrus didn't press further and simply said, it's already so late. Let me take you back to the hotel first. Catherine shook her head and declined. No need to trouble you. I'll go back with Mr. Greg. Cyrus pursed his lips, his gaze shifting to Greg beside him. His expression darkened. Just what kind of scheme does this Greg have in mind for Catherine? With his status, there's no woman he couldn't have by his side. Greg sensed Cyrus's hostility toward him. but he paid no attention to it. Smiling at Catherine, he said, "Let's go." Catherine then stood up and followed Greg out. Cyrus watched Catherine follow them out, his fists clenched tightly, his heart heavy with unease. In the car, Catherine grew drowsy, her eyelids fighting a losing battle. Until she finally succumbed to sleep. Greg noticed Catherine was tired, so he remained silent, letting her drift off. But seeing Catherine struggling to stay awake was somewhat amusing. He had meant to tell her to sleep, but she closed her eyes before he could speak. He pulled the car over to the side of the road, took off his coat to cover Catherine, and turned on the air conditioning. The weather had been chilly these past few days, especially at night, given her already weak constitution. It was better to be cautious. Only after finishing these tasks did Greg start driving again. The journey to the hotel would take about an hour or so, but since Greg noticed Catherine was sleeping soundly, he didn't speed up. By the time they arrived at the hotel, it had taken nearly 2 hours. Meanwhile, Cyrus had already reached the hotel. When he returned, he assumed Catherine and Greg would have arrived long before him. However, when he parked, he didn't see Greg's car anywhere. Cyrus grew increasingly agitated, imagining what the two of them might be doing together. Jealousy was driving him mad. It was half an hour later when he finally saw Catherine. Greg carried Catherine back in his arms. Cyrus had intended to step forward, but a group of people, Catherine's colleagues, rushed ahead first. Mr. Jack also arrived. He saw Greg holding Catherine and was somewhat surprised. He hadn't expected Greg to be here. Glancing again at Catherine, he wondered, could it be that Greg had taken a liking to Catherine? But Catherine's personality makes it absolutely impossible for her to be with Greg, not to mention the vast difference in their social statuses. Mr. Jack gazed at the sleeping Catherine, thinking he should find a chance to talk to her. Greg spoke in a barely audible voice. "Mr. Jack, she's asleep. I'll take her upstairs first. Don't worry. As for the online matter, Ms. Catherine handled it well. You've seen the video posted by the official account, right? The other party won't slander her anymore." Everyone had actually seen it, but they just wanted to check if Catherine had been wronged. Since Greg brought Catherine back, they couldn't say much and simply made way for Greg. Greg took the elevator to Catherine's room, carefully laid her on the bed, tucked her in, and then left the room. Just stepped out when suddenly a fist came flying. Greg swiftly sidestepped, dodging the punch. His eyes crinkled slightly as he looked at the clenched fist of Cyrus, speaking leisurely. "Mr. Cyrus, what do you mean by this?" Cyrus's deep eyes fixed on Greg, his voice icy. "Mr. Greg, as someone of noble status, you shouldn't toy with women like Catherine. She's just an ordinary person, completely out of your league." Greg crossed his arms. "So this is why Mr. Cyrus wants to come at me? Well, let me tell you, I actually quite like Catherine, and I have no intention of toying with her feelings. If possible, I wouldn't hesitate to marry her." Not a single word of what he said was a lie to Cyrus. He genuinely thought Catherine was a wonderful girl, at least in his eyes. She was special. It had been a long time since he'd felt this flutter in his heart. Cyrus felt a surge of jealousy burning in his chest upon hearing this. Clenching his teeth, he said, "Mr. Greg, your words sound noble, but I doubt your family would ever approve of a woman with no status or background marrying into the Kenneth family." Greg slightly opened his eyes, his gaze filled with disdain as he retorted mockingly, "Our Kenneth family doesn't stoop to business marriages. Surely Mr. Cyrus knows that." Cyrus suddenly choked on his words. This was common knowledge among their circles. Many who had hoped for an alliance felt as if they'd lost a prime opportunity, but the Kenneth family simply had the privilege to refuse. "Mr. Greg, you might not know this yet, but Catherine has been with me for 8 years. She's been by my side since university." At this moment, he admitted to being a petty man. He had revealed this matter to drive away Greg. Greg showed no change in expression, the corner of his lips curling. "So what, you're no longer involved with her? Which means I have a chance." Cyrus listened to Greg speak, his heart filled with resentment, and couldn't help but lash out at Greg. Greg was no pushover either, throwing a punch directly at Cyrus. He hadn't originally wanted to fight Cyrus, but hearing Cyrus speak, he truly couldn't hold back. He'd initially thought Cyrus and Catherine were in a proper relationship, only to discover it was something far less respectable. Cyrus had trapped Catherine for 8 years without even giving her proper recognition. What right did Cyrus have to act this way? Truth be told, he was somewhat jealous of Cyrus, who had been with Catherine for 8 years. Catherine was clearly a good girl, but Cyrus didn't cherish her. The two fought together, evenly matched, both bearing marks on their faces. Little did they know their commotion was too loud. In the room, Catherine, who had fallen into a deep sleep, faintly heard a thumping sound coming from the doorway. She furrowed her brows, turned over, but still heard the noise. Catherine was thus awakened. When she opened her eyes, the room was still dim, and it was still dark outside the window. The commotion outside the door grew louder. The room was actually quite soundproof, but it felt like something was pounding against the door, and the noise from it woke her up. Catherine's frown never eased. After hesitating for a moment, she went to open the door. The door was opened. Click. She stood at the door, watching the two men fighting outside, momentarily stunned. Greg and Cyrus were fighting. Why? When the two men saw Catherine, they immediately stopped, neither saying a word. Catherine, though unsure what was happening, still asked, "Aren't you two supposed to be sleeping at this hour?" She wouldn't ask any more questions, just wanted them to leave. After all, if they fought here, she wouldn't be able to sleep. Greg seized the moment to say, "Sleep, MS. Catherine, I'm sorry we disturbed you. I'll go back now." Cyrus also said, "I'm going to rest too." The two of them left just like that. Catherine closed the door only after their figures disappeared from view. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something odd about them. But she didn't dwell on it. During these past few days, Catherine had barely stepped out of her room, with her period ending in just a few more days. She thought it was the perfect time for another round of fun. Watching the boat trip videos her colleagues sent made her want to go out too. So on this day Catherine changed her clothes and came to the seaside. But the weather wasn't very good today, heavily overcast. Catherine asked the staff, "Can we still go out in this weather?" The staff member smiled and said, "No problem, we've gone out often in worse conditions before." Catherine saw that the other tourists didn't seem worried either. So she went aboard as well, but shortly after the boat set off, heavy rain began to fall. Catherine stood on the deck and immediately retreated into the cabin. As she watched the torrential rain outside, a sense of panic rose in her heart. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have boarded the boat, but now there was no turning back. We can only wait for the heavy rain to stop. Catherine sat in her seat, gazing out the window as a massive wave surged in the distance. The boat suddenly rocked violently. She didn't even have time to grab the handrail before she was thrown from her chair. Just as she was about to hit the ground, a large hand shielded Catherine. Instead of falling to the floor, she landed in someone's embrace. Catherine didn't even get a clear look before immediately saying, "Thank you, thank you." As her words trailed off, she looked up and saw Greg. Catherine paused. "Mr. Greg, what are you doing here?" She hadn't noticed Greg when she came up earlier. Greg didn't hide it either. "I saw you board the ship not far away, and I managed to get on at the very last moment before it departed." Catherine, upon hearing this, suddenly found herself at a loss for words. Her mind wandered to all the things Greg had been doing these past few days. He probably didn't come here out of boredom, but to find her. Otherwise, why would he have asked where the team-building event was being held in the first place? Could it be Greg has some different thoughts about me? Now that she thought about it carefully, she realized Greg must be. Otherwise he wouldn't be so patient. Right. Catherine quickly got up from Greg after realizing the situation. She had only intended to discuss their collaboration with Greg and had no other intentions. Greg noticed Catherine's movement, his eyes lowering slightly, but he stood up as well. Truth be told, he had anticipated this outcome. After all, he had been too abrupt. Yet he didn't want to take things slowly. Although they had known each other for a short time, he had genuinely developed feelings for Catherine, an undeniable fact. It was mainly because of Cyrus. Otherwise, he could have taken his time getting to know Catherine properly. But Cyrus was an uncertain variable rather than letting him cause trouble. It was better to clarify things with Catherine first, yet neither of them could keep their balance as the boat rocked again. Catherine was about to fall to the ground once more when Greg caught her directly. "Hold on to me first." She was too light to steady herself alone. Catherine hesitated for a moment, her hands gripping Greg's arm tightly. The boat was still rocking violently. The two of them held each other like that. Greg whispered reassuringly, "It's okay, once we get through this storm. Everything will be fine, we'll make it back safely." Catherine wasn't sure if it was Greg's words that kept her from feeling too nervous. Breathing in Greg's scent made her feel even more at ease. Neither of them spoke. After what seemed like an eternity, the boat gradually stabilized. A crew member came over and reassured everyone. "Please rest assured, we're heading back immediately. After this storm passes, there won't be any more rough waves." Catherine suddenly realized she still hadn't let go of Greg. She quickly released her grip and said to Greg, "Thank you," then sat in his seat without looking at Greg again. Greg fixed his gaze on Catherine and sat directly across from Catherine. He spoke softly, "MS, Catherine, you must have sensed it, I like you." Catherine felt a tremor in her heart and glanced slightly at the man before her. "Mr. Greg, Why do you like me? She's just an ordinary girl. Someone like Greg should find a girl from a similar background. Moreover, after leaving Cyrus, she thought about finding someone ordinary like herself to live a stable life. I admire the resilience in you. The first time he met Catherine, she was looking at him with a gaze full of confusion. He hadn't seen anyone look at him that way in a long time. Plus, Catherine asked him for the manuscript. Knowing she would create the illustrations he loved, he found himself unconsciously drawn in. Catherine smiled. Mr. Greg, our acquaintance is purely professional. Your words suit the moment. But you still don't know me. I might not be as good as you imagine. Ms. Catherine, you forget. Here, I've come to know you too, Greg said, then shifted the topic. So, Ms. Catherine, would you give me a chance? Let's start as friends. Catherine paused, instinctively bringing up Devin. But I'm already married. She regretted saying it the moment the words left her mouth. She didn't believe someone of Greg's status wouldn't have uncovered something. The next second, she heard Greg say, I know you have no real connection with him. Originally, he hadn't intended to investigate Catherine, but Cyrus's words left him too uneasy, so he had someone look into it. He just never expected Catherine to encounter not only a scoundrel like Cyrus, but also to be deceived by others. In the end, Catherine agreed to be friends with Greg. Greg gently said, Since we're friends now, Catherine, you don't have to call me Mr. Greg anymore. Catherine blinked her eyes and hesitantly called out, Greg. Greg's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He lowered his gaze slightly, the tips of his ears turning faintly red. If Kenneth's family saw Greg like this, they would all laugh. Greg, that annoying guy, actually feeling shy for once. Catherine immediately regretted her words. Greg. Greg snapped out of it and responded softly, yeah. He was in no hurry now. At least Catherine had learned of his feelings, which was far better than Cyrus suddenly appearing before Catherine to accuse him of ill intentions. After the wind and waves subsided, the boat quickly returned to shore. Catherine stood up, her body feeling somewhat weak. Greg immediately reached out to steady her. Let me help you down. Catherine didn't refuse either. She genuinely felt somewhat unsteady. This boat ride had been the most unpleasant project she'd experienced since arriving here. When disembarking, Catherine took several deep breaths of fresh air and immediately felt much better. Greg had been standing by the whole time, keeping Catherine company. Catherine felt a bit embarrassed and started walking back to the hotel. The two returned to the hotel together. Catherine felt hungry and headed to the restaurant. Greg followed her. In the restaurant, Greg ordered what Catherine liked to eat. Catherine looked at him, momentarily stunned. Greg handed the menu to the waiter. That's all for now. He turned his head and saw Catherine looking at him, explaining, I noticed you've been eating these all along. They must be your favorites. Catherine hadn't expected Greg to notice. Still, she sincerely said to Greg, Thank you. We're friends. No need for such formalities. Actually, Catherine was still somewhat unaccustomed to their new friendship. It had been so long since she'd last made a friend. For the past 8 years, aside from her co-workers, she had never gone out to socialize, so she'd had no friends at all. Halfway through the meal, Cyrus appeared wearing a mask and sunglasses. He had been rushing through variety show recordings these days. Because of Kelly, they had to switch to another person, and with time running short, they could only hurry. Finally getting some rest, he wanted to visit Catherine, only to find her with Greg. Cyrus, if not for the mask, everyone would see his face was as dark as charcoal. He simply sat right beside Catherine. Catherine pursed her lips, never expecting Cyrus to be so persistently annoying. How irritating. Greg frowned slightly, saying to Cyrus, You shouldn't be here, none of us welcome you. Cyrus's gaze darkened as he looked toward Catherine beside him, seeing her troubled expression. He wanted to speak but found himself at a loss for words, ultimately choking back his thoughts. Catherine had eaten her fill by now, so she stood up and said to Greg, Let's go. Okay. Catherine walked out from the other side. Cyrus instinctively called out, Catherine. But Catherine ignored him and left the restaurant. The agent Duke appeared out of nowhere, coming to Cyrus's side, patted him on the shoulder, and said, Give up. I'd say it's already pretty good if she doesn't hate you first. Cyrus lowered his head slightly. Impossible. To give up would mean giving Greg an opportunity, and he couldn't bring himself to do that. The agent Duke let out a helpless sigh. Cyrus had always been this stubborn, and there was nothing he could do to persuade him. Perhaps he really needed to hit a wall before he'd be willing to give up. These past few days, Catherine had gone out to have fun with her colleagues. Meanwhile, Greg had to return home early because it was a family member's birthday. Before leaving, he even explained to Catherine why he had to go. Catherine initially wanted to say there was no need to tell her, but Greg spoke up first. She could only say, Then happy birthday to your aunt. Greg said earnestly, I'll pass it along. Catherine smiled, not taking it to heart after all. It was just polite conversation. Today was the day to return to City A, after getting off the plane. Catherine was chilled to the bone, her body trembling uncontrollably. City A had turned cold again. A colleague handed her a very thick coat, and only then did she gradually begin to feel some warmth. Catherine, the first thing she did after getting home was turn on the air conditioner and burrow under the covers. She had woken up early for her morning flight and was exhausted, falling asleep as soon as she lay down. When she woke up, she found Greg had sent her a message. Catherine read the message he sent. My mom has already received your well wishes. She was stunned, and when she listened to the voice message, it was a noblewoman's voice. Catherine, thank you for your blessings. Catherine was even more dumbfounded. Greg had actually relayed what she said a few days ago. She felt somewhat embarrassed now, hesitating for a long time without knowing how to reply to the message. Then she sent a sticker and didn't dare to look at it again. The other person instantly replied, don't overthink it. Catherine suddenly found herself at a loss for words again. Greg sent another message. Are you back yet? Catherine finally knew how to reply. Yeah. The next second, Greg seemed to have already known what she was doing as he sent. You haven't eaten yet, right? Remember to have your meal. I'll go eat now. After sending this message, she added a sticker to say she was going to eat and bid farewell. She couldn't continue the conversation with Greg, which felt somewhat awkward, but Catherine really got up to cook some noodles to eat. Having been away for the past half-month, she had already cleared out her fridge beforehand, leaving only some noodles and eggs. She wasn't very hungry, so eating a little would suffice. After this team-building event, the company's business also increased significantly. Catherine didn't reach out to Greg, saying their collaboration could wait since Greg ought to be home with his family. Besides, she's not in a hurry these few days, as long as Greg collaborates with her. At first, Catherine thought she might be assigned a manuscript, but when Mr. Jack approached her, it turned out to be about something else entirely. In the office, Mr. Jack smiled at Catherine and said, Catherine, we have an opportunity for an overseas exchange training program in Switzerland. The higher-ups recommended you. Would you be willing to go? Catherine agreed without hesitation. Mr. Jack, I'd love to. This was an opportunity. She truly loved her job. Back when she was in City N, a similar opportunity had arisen, but she had turned it down for Cyrus. Now that another chance had come, how could she possibly let it slip away? Besides, if she left this place, Cyrus wouldn't be able to chase her all the way abroad. Mr. Jack was overjoyed to see Catherine agree. Great, great. I'd heard from Mr. Paul in the Southern District that you were unwilling before, and I was afraid you might refuse this time too. This is an opportunity one won't pass up again. I'm glad you've come around. We're scheduled to depart in half a month. Mr. Jack was genuinely pleased. After all, Catherine was truly talented. Their company had fought hard for this opportunity, and naturally, it should go to someone capable. Upon her return, she could help propel the company forward. Even if the other party eventually goes solo, their company's reputation will have been established, so it wouldn't be a total loss. Plus, Catherine doesn't seem like the type to go solo. Catherine nodded and said, all right. After leaving the office, Catherine first sent a message to Greg, informing him about her plans to go abroad, then wanted to carefully consider their collaboration. Greg simply replied, I'm in no hurry. Catherine, if you have time to draw for me after you leave, that would be great. Your trip abroad is more important. Catherine read the message from Greg and hesitated for a moment before replying, if you're in a hurry, I can finish the illustration for you first. After all, Greg was her friend, and considering he might not find another illustrator to his liking later, she could help him out now. But Greg still insisted, your own matters are more important. Focus on preparing for your trip abroad, don't worry about me. Since Greg kept saying this, Catherine couldn't really press further. On my way back, I happened to see Cyrus standing at the door. He was holding flowers in his hands. Cyrus smiled when he saw Catherine return and handed her the flowers. Catherine, you're off work. Catherine didn't take them and said indifferently, what do you want? I just came to see you. You've seen me, now you can leave. Catherine finished speaking and was about to open the door to go inside. Cyrus stepped forward, hesitated for a moment, then pleaded, in 2 weeks it'll be your birthday. I'd like to celebrate it with you. Catherine stopped what she was doing and turned slightly to look at Cyrus. I'm not celebrating my birthday this year. He wasn't lying, because she would be going to Switzerland in half a month, likely on her actual birthday. Truth be told, if it weren't for Cyrus's reminder, she might have forgotten about her birthday altogether. Cyrus frowned slightly upon hearing Catherine's words. How can you not celebrate it? She had always gotten by before, But he himself didn't like celebrating birthdays with her, he just bought her some gifts. This is my business. Cyrus looked at her with a complicated expression. Catherine, a voice drawled slowly, since she doesn't want to, Mr. Cyrus forcing her seems like overstepping boundaries. Greg walked over and stood in front of Cyrus. Cyrus looked at the suddenly appearing Greg, his expression changing. This Greg was practically his nemesis, showing up every single time. Greg said with a smile, Mr. Cyrus, you look so pale, surely you're not cursing me in your heart. Cyrus's expression froze for a moment. What nonsense are you talking about? Greg continued provoking Cyrus. Only you know whether it's true or not. Cyrus grew increasingly pale. Greg gently glanced at Catherine, speaking softly. Catherine, go inside first, it's cold out. Catherine then entered the house, still hoping to have Greg come in as well, but after she went in, Greg immediately closed the door. She probably understood that Greg didn't want Cyrus to enter. Actually, she had a way to prevent Cyrus from coming in. But now that the door is closed, let's just follow Greg's plan. Before long, Catherine received a message from Greg, telling her to rest well and that he'd come see her tomorrow. Though she didn't know what had just happened outside, this message meant Greg had gotten rid of Cyrus. Catherine replied with an okay and started cooking dinner. The next day after work, Catherine had just stepped out of the company's main entrance when Greg pulled up in his car, waiting right at the gate. Greg called out as soon as he saw Catherine. Catherine, the colleagues were no longer surprised, simply assuming Greg was pursuing Catherine, especially since Greg had already appeared during their time in Sonia. Catherine said goodbye to her colleagues and walked over, standing by the car door. Greg, what brings you here? Greg got out of the car with a smile and said, didn't I message you last night saying I'd come see you today? So I waited for you to finish work. Let me treat you to dinner, and we can talk about the illustration project too. Alright, Catherine didn't refuse. Greg considerately opened the car door for Catherine. The two arrived at the restaurant. Greg talked about some illustration matters before suddenly asking, you'll probably be abroad for quite a while this time, won't you? Catherine paused before answering, I'm not sure yet, but it'll likely take several years. Well, I hope you can learn more. Catherine felt a warmth in her heart and replied with a smile, okay. After that day, Catherine also took a look at the novel manuscript Greg had given her. She didn't have much work at the moment, just preparing to go abroad. She also mentioned her collaboration with Greg to Mr. Jack. Mr. Jack was grinning from ear to ear, but Greg wasn't in a hurry anymore. He also hoped Catherine could take her time and prepare for going abroad first. Catherine actually had very little to pack. She already had her passport, and the company was handling her visa, which should be processed within these 2 weeks, otherwise Mr. Jack wouldn't have arranged for her to go abroad in half a month, so she only needed to pack some clothes, so the remaining time was spent sketching drafts for Catherine. If taken slowly, the day she finishes the drafts would coincide with her planned departure abroad. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Catherine also received her visa and flight ticket, coincidentally scheduled for departure on her birthday. What an uncanny coincidence indeed. On the day of departure, Mr. Jack personally escorted Catherine to the airport, International Airport. Mr. Jack said earnestly, Catherine, study hard over there. Catherine nodded. After entering the airport, she sent Greg's manuscript to him and also said, Greg, I'm leaving for Switzerland today. A message soon came from the other side. The drawing is very good. Catherine had thought Greg would be angry. After all, she had only told him she was leaving when she was about to go today. Greg sent another message. Catherine, happy birthday. Catherine looked at the words and replied, thank you. The boarding announcement sounded. Catherine hastily sent a message saying boarding now before putting away her phone. Soon, she was on the plane. The aircraft took off. Catherine gradually saw the blue sky and white clouds outside the window. Her heart filled with joy. On the other side, Cyrus was preparing a gift, intending to send it to Catherine. Although Catherine had previously said she didn't want to celebrate, he still wanted to give Catherine a present. But today, he felt uneasy for some unknown reason. He waited for Catherine to return, but after a long wait, there was still no sign of Catherine coming home. He drove to Catherine's company, but it was already empty. Cyrus ordered someone to investigate. He sat in the car, his expression tense. When his phone rang, did you find anything? The voice on the phone said, Cyrus, Catherine has gone abroad. Cyrus froze, almost unable to believe it. What did you say? His voice trembled slightly as he said, she went abroad. Cyrus clutched his phone tightly. Catherine had gone abroad. She actually went abroad. Did she really want to distance herself from him that much? At this moment, his heart felt as though countless silver needles had pierced it, leaving him breathless. Couldn't even his admission of fault change anything? Why on earth is this happening? Catherine, after arriving in Switzerland, had her accommodation arranged by the local responsible person. The company had everything planned for her future. All she needed to do was focus on her studies. She was still a bit unaccustomed when she first arrived, but the people here were very kind, and she gradually adapted to life here. Catherine truly witnessed that there are always people beyond people, as the others were all remarkable figures. She studied under them for a month, and now her skills have improved rapidly. It had been a whole month without any news from Greg, when suddenly he sent her a message. "Catherine, where do you live?" Catherine's first reaction was confusion, followed immediately by asking, "Greg, are you in Switzerland?" The reply came, "Yes." Catherine eventually sent her address to Greg. She hadn't expected Greg to come back. After all, she thought she had already left City A. And their relationship wasn't close enough for Greg to make the trip. It wasn't that she didn't believe Greg when he said he liked her, but she felt his feelings weren't strong enough to bring him here. But this time, she was wrong. Greg still came. Catherine saw Greg again. He looked weathered and had lost a lot of weight. She poured Greg a glass of water and finally asked, "Greg, are you okay?" Greg smiled at Catherine. "All good, just wanted to see you sooner. So I rushed to learn a few things. I've also settled in Switzerland starting today." Catherine froze for a moment, locking eyes with Greg. "You." Suddenly, she found herself at a loss for words. Greg took a sip of water and said, "Just that my family has a company in Switzerland. I'm here to manage it. This is work for me." Catherine averted her gaze and responded, But deep down she still understood Greg's reason for coming. Later, Greg moved right next to Catherine. He would often cook for Catherine, and their relationship grew much closer. Catherine never expected Cyrus to show up as well. That day, she happened to be having a barbecue with Cyrus. Coming face to face with Cyrus, Catherine's smiling face stiffened slightly. Why had Cyrus returned too? Cyrus had been utterly despondent ever since that day. The agent Duke had been trying to get Cyrus to give up, especially since the person had already gone abroad. There was even less chance now. But just as he refused to give up, he insisted on coming to find Catherine, yet he had a drama to join the set for, and he couldn't just leave. After finally waiting for the filming to wrap up, he rushed over in a hurry, only to see Catherine smiling at Greg. Cyrus was already in a bad mood, and seeing this scene completely set him off. He walked over, pointed at Greg, and said to Catherine, "He's just playing with you. There's no chance you two could ever be together." Catherine frowned with displeasure. Cyrus, now completely irrational, shouted, "You've been with me for 8 years. Do you really think the Kenneth family would ever accept someone of your status?" A sudden slap rang out. Slap. The surroundings instantly fell silent. Catherine had reddened eyes, her hand trembling slightly. Cyrus froze in place, feeling as if everything inside him had shattered beyond repair. He had said the wrong thing. Catherine couldn't hold back anymore and shouted, "Cyrus, how pathetic can you be? Do you think this will win me back? You're still the same spineless person as before. I'm telling you, even if I die, I'll never be with you again." Cyrus lowered his head, not daring to look at Catherine again. "I'm sorry, get out." Cyrus said nothing more and simply turned to leave. Catherine watched as the person left, fighting back tears before turning to look at Greg beside her, her voice hoarse as she said, "What Cyrus just said, it's all true. I know, he told me. I don't care about any of that, and neither does the Kenneth family. If you don't believe me, I can call my family right now." Before the words even finished, Catherine could no longer hold back her tears and broke down crying. Greg panicked when he saw Catherine crying, fumbling to hand her a tissue. Then he stayed by Catherine's side. After that day, Greg paid even more attention to Catherine, fearing she might be influenced by Cyrus. But Catherine wasn't affected. She focused diligently on her studies. In the end, she opened a Twitter account to share her little character drawings. As for why she wanted to draw stick figure comics, it was learned from a Swiss professor who specialized in cartooning, which significantly improved Catherine's illustration skills. She then turned her experiences in Switzerland into stick figure comics. Catherine's stick figure comics were different from others. They turned out quite charming and even gained her some fans. A year later, she took leave and returned home, primarily to resolve matters between herself and Devin. Both sets of parents didn't say much upon hearing this, as they were already somewhat aware of the situation. After that, the Ernest family parents stopped pressuring Catherine. Since they didn't want their daughter to jump from one pit of fire into another, Catherine, though abroad, ensured her parents' financial needs were met and even enrolled the elderly couple in a senior university to keep them from getting bored. Over the next 3 years, Catherine's painting skills became increasingly refined. But then she veered off course again, dabbling in oil painting. As a result, her company's leadership directly entered her work into a competition. Though she didn't win first place, she still achieved the notable accomplishment of third place in Switzerland. After all, she had only been studying for 3 years. During these 3 years, Greg remained by Catherine's side. Not only did he not leave, but he actively supported Catherine's career, sometimes even attending classes with Catherine as he had before. But Greg had no talent at all. His drawings were so ugly that they became the subject of ridicule, yet he remained undeterred. Continuing to learn alongside Catherine, 2 more years passed, and Catherine had not only gained some fame in Switzerland but also back in her home country, the cruise lounge. Cyrus looked at his phone, where the screen displayed a stick figure drawing by Catherine. Beside him, his agent Duke, upon seeing this, remarked, "5 years, and you still haven't let go." Cyrus put down his phone, closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said, "What if I can't let go? The moment I said the wrong thing in Switzerland, I knew clearly that I had no chance left. In the end, it was my own fault. It's time for filming. I need to go shoot now." He stood up, took one last look at the cartoon on his phone, and then left the lounge. Today is Greg's birthday. Catherine is celebrating with Greg in their garden at home. The sky was filled with stars. Catherine looked at Greg and said, "I didn't expect you to only want the portrait I drew for you," Greg said sincerely. "I really love this gift." Catherine looked at Greg's face, hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Greg, it's been 5 years, I've kept refusing you. Can you really keep waiting?" Greg responded solemnly, "Yes, after all, the Kenneth family has other heirs. It's not like they're counting on me alone." "Catherine, I'll stay with you till we're old." Catherine's gaze met Greg's eyes, and the raw sincerity in them made her look away. Greg proved his words with actions. Year after year passed. Catherine gained modest international fame, shining ever brighter. Greg stayed by her side the whole time, never uttering a single negative word. Time flies, and another 5 years have passed. At Catherine's birthday party, she said to Greg, "I only have one birthday wish, that we get our marriage license. Will you?" Greg froze for a moment, tugged at his ear, and muttered, "Getting old, must be hearing things now." Catherine gave Greg a light smack. "I'm serious, are you in or not?" Greg lit up instantly, eagerly agreeing, "Yes, absolutely." As they stepped out of the civil affairs office, Greg was grinning like a fool. Catherine looked at him and smiled along. Under the sun, the two walked away hand in hand. This time, she had met the right person. "Greg, looking forward to learning from you for the rest of my life." The end.